form. That's it.
Keep it with prayer pledge, and then in your prayer, would you mind mentioning Coach Neal? He's the one, he's put under a coma because of the COVID. He's the JV coach baseball. And then there's the fact of the day. Call the August 5th, 2020 City Council meeting to order. We will have the invocation and pledge and the fact of the day by Commissioner Smith. I'll stand, please.
Let us assume the attitude of prayer. Our God, our Father, we come once again to say thank you for the many blessings you bestowed upon us. Come to say thank you, our Father, for this opportunity for us to gather to partake of the business of this community. We pray, Heavenly Father, for this council, for our mayor. Oh, Heavenly Father, we bless, oh God, all the people that are here today. We speak peace, oh God, among our citizens, that all the decisions we make will be pleasing and honorable in your sight. We pray, oh Heavenly Father, for Coach Bill Neely, oh Heavenly Father, who's in a medically induced coma. But we know, God, that you're a doctor that's never lost a case. And we just pray right now, Lord, you would just touch him from the crown of his head to the sole of his feet. Touch him, Lord, that he will feel your presence, your power, and know that you have not left him alone. Father, we bless the family of God, that you will comfort them and hold them in the hollow of your hands during these hours of these many blessings. We ask in thy Son, Jesus' name, amen.
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 I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our fact for today, on August the 7th in 1782, in Newburgh, New York, General George Washington, the Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army, creates a badge for military merit, a decoration consisting of a purple, heart-shaped piece of silk, edged with a narrow binding of silver, with the word merit stitched across the face in silver. The badge was to be presented to the soldiers for any singular meritorious action. Washington's Purple Heart was awarded to only 3 known soldiers during the Revolutionary War, and the decoration was largely forgotten until 1927, when General Charles P. Summerall, the U.S. Army Chief of Staff, sent an unsuccessful draft bill to Congress to revive the badge of military merit. In 1931, Summerall's successor, General Douglas MacArthur, took up the cause, hoping to reinstate the medal in time for the bicentennial of George Washington's birth. On February 22nd, 1932, Washington's 200th birthday, the U.S. War Department announced the creation of the Order of the Purple Heart. In addition to aspects of Washington's original design, the new Purple Heart also displays a burst of Washington and his coat of arms. The Order of the Purple Heart, the oldest American military decoration for military merit, is awarded to members of the U.S. Armed Forces who have been killed or wounded in action against an enemy. It is also awarded to soldiers who have suffered maltreatment as prisoners of war. Our fact for the day.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Okay. Presentations. Captain Sanchez.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, members. Will Sanchez, Apopka Fire Department. I'm going to be doing a presentation on our EMS billing overview over the last couple months. So in total, we're going to talk about 8 months in review, but there's about 6 months of core data that we're going to be presenting on. A couple of the key objectives that we're going to be going over is just to make sure that everybody's familiar as far as with our billing policies, what we're actually doing over there as far as for EMS billing, and where we intend to go. So I'm going to cover a couple of these objectives. First one I want to start off with is our Change Healthcare team. Unfortunately, they could not attend today because of the COVID restrictions. At our year-end meeting, they will be here. Jennifer is our client manager, and she does an overview from their standpoint as far as how we're progressing and what we're doing as far as an EMS billing. But a couple of these members listed up here have daily communications with our staff here at the city, Maggie from operations, Maria reconciling, and Rick from our revenue cycles. So we're in talks with them as far as, if not daily, every other day, and then we have a monthly meeting. Our Apopka team, I want to give more credit to, is our Apopka firefighters. Our department has restarted our billing cycle almost a year ago. And when we did this recycle, we started all over, the men and women had to be retrained as far as make sure that we were up to date as far as all the compliances and regulations that we had to do. And over the last several months, we have seen not that they were any less than great, but they're exceptional as far as the way that they're producing their reports and capturing the information that they're actually providing to patients. Listed up here as far as firefighters, Chief Wylam, as far as our fire chief, our fire chief's assistant, Vicki Carnicelli, she does our accounts payable. Myself, our finance director is part of our EMS billing team. And Kayla, Jasmine, and Edgar from finance also are huge contributors to making this thing operate. I know this slide looks a little busy, and there's a lot of information I want to cover on here, and it'll be covered in other slides as we go on. But the first thing I just wanted to identify, and that we spent a lot of time on this year, was the credentialing factor. The way that we were previously set up by a previous biller was very unique. So what we had to kind of do is unravel the way that we were set up in the system, analyze it, make sure that we're compliant with anything that's existing now as far as regulations and moving forward. All that included as far as from our legal name to the way that we actually receive our payments. Now they go to our banks, Novus, their main headquarters in Georgia. Our tax ID, make sure all of our payers were updated with our tax ID and reclaiming our NPI, which is our National Provider Code. That's anybody that deals with Medicare, Medicaid, and the way that we actually receive numbers or receive payments for it. On that graph, EMS has really two different types of breakdowns as far as if we provided a basic life support service, there's a fee associated with that, and ALS, and there's an ALS too as far as higher levels, meaning that we're providing more services and assessments that we're doing to those patients. In October of last year, we came forward to you with a recommendation to move forward with adjusting our ambulance rates for a fee schedule, and we moved forward with that, which is great because we had not done so in so many years. What this did is kind of brought us up to par with our surrounding agencies, our neighbors. Yes, there's still many that are much higher than us, but this was a gradual increase that we did just to kind of get there as far as with the other surrounding ones. As you see in the far column, that plus minus, that's how much we actually increased per each individual category. And in this slide, I'm going to reference that previous slide, how we increased. These are our current rates that we have up there and how they're coded as far as when we send off for a bill. But just like us, that we have a fee schedule, Medicare also has a fee schedule, and Medicaid has a fee schedule. And that's very important when we start getting to our executive summary, that you understand that not only do we bill at $879, for example, of an ALS-1, we have to then compare that to if it's a Medicare patient or a Medicaid patient, that we adjust to those allowable rates. So they're zoned by region, zip code, demographics, and they give us an allowable rate. Medicare pays up to 80%. They also charge a 2% sequester rate. And Medicaid is a flat rate. For example, an ALS-1 that we would charge $879 for, they tell us that's a flat rate of $190. So in this chart, there's that same comparison. The top one is what our city rate is. And we use just an example as far as our ALS-1 at $879. The allowable Medicare amount is $457, and then there's a contractual adjustment that must be made. That contractual adjustment, consider it as a write-off because we've agreed to that by being a participating partner with Medicare and Medicaid. Same thing with Medicaid. That same summary as far as $879, their fee schedule of $190, almost $700 that has to be adjusted in that contractual agreement. Where that brings us to, in further slides, we're going to see that that number tends to increase depending on our patient population. One of the new programs that we were able to roll with this year, with the change in credentialing and meeting all the requirements of Medicare and Medicaid, we were able to participate in the PEMT program. This program was obviously endorsed by the fire chiefs of Florida a couple years back, and it's funded through ACA, the Administration for Healthcare Administration. What they do is, on that money that you're having to do a contractual agreement for Medicaid patients, instead of the burden being on the taxpayer where you have to write that amount for the services that you're doing, Since it's a shared program funded Medicaid by the state and by the feds, for every dollar that we put in, they're allowing us to recover up to 61 cents back. We had to meet all the compliancy regulations. We had to meet as far as their expenditure reports and produce all the information that they requested based off the state's fiscal year. So for us, we had to use 2 fiscal years. And the limited amount of information that we were able to submit because of the data, now we're able to capture more of that data. So we're going to be able to actually submit further information for this year's that's coming up. But we've already received $48,412 just from that program, taking that burden off the taxpayer of a complete write-off adjustment, and it's coming back to us. So the policy and compliance part here, I want to make sure this is kind of a crash course into billing, make sure that we're all on the same page. In order for us to bill, we already established our rates, and we know that there's going to be contractual agreements depending on if it's a government plan. Then it's how do we bill? What we're gathering right now is we're compiling a policy and procedures manual as far as a compliancy program to present back to council at the year end, letting you know with all the data of a year, this is the trends we saw so that you can make the best informative decision on the direction that you'd like us to go in. We continued billing the same way that we were billing before in the sense of billing everyone. There's different programs out there that there's certain individuals that you don't bill for, you write off. That's going to be presented to you at the year-end meeting, but we just continued the same way that we were. And giving kudos to our dispatch, we've had a program in place since 2016 that's called priority dispatching. This is the industry standard, how calls are dispatched, and based off how those calls are being dispatched, they have a configuration code that allows for billing as well. And then they also look at that report as far as to see if it should be upgraded, degraded, as far as how it's going on. The information is provided on that classification for billing. And why I mentioned dispatch is by the end of this year, they will be fully trained that they could execute that program and we can meet the national standard of how to actually dispatch and how we're actually going to be able to use that information for billing. The second one is we did follow the Medicare benefit policy manual stating as far as we're not going to bill descendants for anybody that's deceased. And the next one I highlighted in red, it's not medically necessary as far as courtesy transports and non-transports. Just so this is a crucial point of our industry is when we respond to a 911 call, it doesn't mean that every patient that we respond to wants to go to the hospital. There's some patients that don't want to go to the hospital, and that's a refusal. There is no charge for service for those individuals. And early on, I stated about the firemen, the retraining, and what they've gone through over the last year as far as the documentation training. They've done such a great job at that because what that does is they're not writing their narratives for payment. They're writing their narratives based off of what they did. They're doing the proper documentation. They're doing everything correctly. Because before, if the documentation was not provided correctly, that would be a courtesy transport. You can't bill, just because we took that individual to the hospital doesn't mean that we could bill them for it. If it wasn't medically necessary, there's no way that we can move forward with submitting for that claim. If we did, then we could be liable for it. So the way the structure is set up for our billing now is an individual that meets that medical necessity, we transport them to the hospital. We then send them as far as not only do they receive HIPAA information there, we also send a HIPAA letter with a RFI letter, stands for Request for Information. That informational sheet is if we weren't unable to capture any insurance information at the hospital or with one of our providers, it's asking them what type of insurance that you have and what do you want us to bill your insurance for. Within the next 15 days, our billing company is integrated with our software system, and they have business agreements with our local hospitals in behalf of us so that we can look at the information on the back end from the hospital to get the most relative and current information of their health insurance so that we could go ahead and process that claim for a bill. At the 30-day mark, we send another notice out to the individual letting them know, hey, is there any information that might be missed? Is this the correct information? And we follow up at a 60-day and a 90-day. In that process of time, if we have not made any contact with that individual, what they're doing is running them through like a clearinghouse, seeing if they have Medicare and Medicaid, especially depending on their age, seeing if their address has changed, kind of trying to find that information of the individual. Is there any more current information? At the 120-day mark, we do a review. What are we missing? Are we missing birth date, social? What is the information? And we kind of do a final review of that actual claim. At 150 days currently today, we move this to a separate line. That 150-day mark, we move it to a line that you guys will see later on that says as far as contractual agreements for write-off, but that's because we have not come to you just yet without a compliance plan of what do you want us to do moving forward as far as policies? Do you want us to send this to collections? Do you want us to move forward with writing this off? So that total amount gets reviewed, and you're going to be able to make that decision on the guidance of which way you want us to go. In that final review, we'll talk about the different collection companies, but just understand, sending it to a collection company, you only recover about 1 to 3% of any EMS transports. And if you're collecting more than that from collections, then there's something that's going on that we're not detailing and working the back end on those claims. We're now set up for credit card payments, and all of our payments are now submitted to a lockbox at the actual bank. So it's nobody's receiving the money here at the city, nobody's receiving the money at the billing company. Everything's going to our lockbox, which gets digitally processed. The bank obviously secures it, lines it up as far as for both agents, or for us and the billing company to verify and reconcile with the deposits that are being made. Once again, with COVID, instead of our quarterly trainings, we're kind of moving to more of a WebEx, making sure that everybody's staying consistent with all the requirements. I listed up here as far as our contract terms, just to review. So you guys see, as far as currently, we're at a 5.5% as far as the net revenue, $9 for a patient encounter of Medicaid that's processed, and 65 cents on the HIPAA compliancy that are sent to the patients. There is a 6% charge for anything as far as supplemental programs like we were able to do with the PEMT program. They assist that in the verification through the accountants and send that out. The next three major bolds on the right side are the key things that we're doing right now with that compliance plan. We're making sure that we're compliant with all the regulations, the HIPAA, being able to provide you guys with policies and procedures to move forward with. Another thing that we're also doing that wasn't available to us in the past was making sure that any of the associates that we have as a city for EMS billing, any of our vendors, any of our employees, that they're actually being run through the Office of the Inspector General's clearinghouse as far as for an exclusion list. If a member, a new hire, appears on that exclusion list, it will prohibit us from continuing to render as far as any services to Medicare and Medicaid patients. The last part is pretty much the easiest one to explain because Change Healthcare has done everything for us there. The red flag rule as far as requiring institutions, as far as make sure that there is no identity theft and how we're keeping everybody's information secure. Not only are our patient records being stored on our server, patient records are also being stored on an encrypted server. A key thing that they have is that they own their own clearinghouse. They bill for 200 EMS agencies nationwide, some of the biggest departments, and they've been in Florida for about 30 years. With that large of a company, we're able to take on these services, meaning that all their mailing services, they produce as far as they do their own invoices, they do their own packaging, they submit that directly to the person to limit any breaches that might occur. That education and training, as far as component that we spoke about early on with the firefighters, this is something that Change Healthcare was able to offer us. We did documentation training for every single member that worked in the city. We've provided as far as update information to our finance department, any regulations, any changes, especially in a couple slides, we'll be talking about COVID and how that's affected our billing. So there's some changes that are about to come up, and this is something that we're staying current with. But the biggest benefactor that we received was the training, making sure that the individuals understand why we're capturing certain information, what the regulations are behind it, how we have to obtain proper signatures. So that was very big, and like I said, kudos to our firefighters. The way that they have excelled as far as in their report writing is phenomenal. So new tool that's being added from Change Healthcare, this is exclusive to them. It's not only do they own their own clearinghouse, they're also launching an MPX program that's going to limit anybody that's still left that does paper processing as far as the payment to moving to a digital system. The majority of all of our payers pay on a digital format. an EFT, but now we're going to be moving to a quicker payment receiving from our payers. It also has a performance analytic for us to see as far as our denial rate, first submission rates, making sure that we're staying compliant and what the holdups are, so at the year we can decide on further training. So our executive summary report is a monthly report that's sent out to us. One of the key things I want to identify, I'll go through the columns real quick. The first one is, look at the timeline that we got approved for being able to bill. We didn't get approved until late November, and that was because of credentialing. Once again, it was one of those unique setups that we had previously that took a little bit longer to establish as far as and resubmit for our credentialing. We're 100% compliant as far as on our credentialing moving forward. We own all of our names, our rights, everything that we have here. The first column breaks down our transport volume. In this time period, how many patients we transported to the hospital. We were just over 5,000. And then that next column, that's where you see that gross in orange, those are charges. That's what we charged at our rate, the rate that was set before council. Depending on the level of an ALS or a BLS, it was over $4 million in charges. There are contractual agreements, which are the adjustments right in the middle. Those contractual agreements, the majority of those, 90% of them, are from a government-based payer, so we have to make those adjustments there. And then that net under the charges is how much we can move forward and charge for those services that we did. On the collections, you're going to see on the collections as far as that we received $955,000 in approximately 8 months, but the majority of it was concluded within 6 to 7 months. We're at $955 as of the end of June. Within the next 60 days, now that we've received 6 months of continuous payments, we're actually looking at anybody that might have been a secondary payer that did not pay before primary, because those then get reimbursed, or if there was an overpayment, we have 60 days to issue those out. That's our next phase that we're moving in. And our collection rates, these are matrix that are set up for us to follow how we're going to be able, or to stay on par of an assessment on how we're actually collecting. There is the gross collection rate, but one that we truly focus in on is our net collection rate. And our collection rate per transport. Our collection rate per transport pretty much is how much are we receiving from our actual transport after the adjustments are made, what we're receiving. Currently, for here, it's at $186. Based off of our demographical area, we were estimating being around $230 to $250. This was pre-pandemic time, but as you see, this is a continuation as it's increasing, and we're continuing to strive to be at that 200. Plus, I definitely, in a couple slides, be able to show you how we're going to get there fairly quick. But our biggest thing here is that it's a continuation, and our billing services are truly, this is 6 months of a timeline. We're ramping up. This is a service that once we get a full year's worth of income that's coming in, we're able to see where our key numbers are. And our accounts receivable, our aging reports, to make sure that we're working those correctly. When the moment we first started billing, we already had 92 days into some of these claims before they were even processed out. And some of these claims will not be funded because there is timely claims that have to be done within a certain amount of time. And due to that credentialing, it took us a little bit longer to actually get on board to be able to ship these out. When we're looking at these aging reports, if you look at it, it seems a little high, but EMS billing is different than medical billing than any other type of billing. A government agency has 14 days to issue out a payment to us once it's submitted in a timely manner. Once we get that back, if it's not within those 14 days, it builds interest and so on. But on a regular self-pay, somebody that, or has a payer with an insurance company, it's typically from the day that we billed, 85 days to the day that we could actually close out that call. So our goal in AR, we're gonna be talking about it further on, it's about 85 days at the max that we wanna be on. We do have an alert set for 120 days, but understand that we could have already received payment for this individual and they still show in an AR because we have not received the secondary payment. They might have a managed care plan, a Medicare, and then a secondary. So whatever the plan might be, there might be a secondary one, and that's why they still show an AR. Net bad debt, there's in a couple slides that's going to give you the same breakdown. Our key performance parameters, It's everything that you just saw. This is a different report that we look at just to see what it is monthly, quarterly, we're comparing it, our fiscal year, and then there's that prediction. When we came before council last year, we predicted that we'd be about $1.2 million. We're on track to hit the $1.2 million in net revenue for this year. And next year, we're estimating that we're going to be at $1.6 million. The way our accounts are flowing in and the services that we're rendering, it's actually right on line as far as with our predictions. Our payer mix, this is good to understand what we have in our demographical area. At first, it shows you that it's a 43% self-pay. That's because there's lack of information of health insurance that's being captured, because these are emergency scenes. Somebody might not have the ability to let us know they do have insurance or they don't, or they couldn't provide it until later on. So it hits this first report showing as a self-pay. But when we look at the gross receipts today, our self-pay population is about 3%. The majority of our population here is going to be on some type of government plan insurance. Medicare, Medicaid, about 48% of that, and 44% are going to be our private insurances. Looking at our payer group in comparison, they also have, based on that payer group, what our average run is that we're collecting per that group. So earlier I told you we were at $186 overall year-to-date on our collections per transport. On an average, depending on each payer group, it identifies as far as what the average that we're actually being able to collect back. There is one key highlight here, which is the Medicaid. There's about 110 claims that are still on hold from Medicaid because of our credentialing. We've proven as far as our entity and who we are, but this is something that moving forward, we're expecting their release within the next 30 to 60 days. Once that releases, then we'll see a decrease in the old AR reports, and then we'll see an increase in revenue there as well. The biggest takeaway will probably be this slide. Out of the 5,000 transports we did, if we look at it, 61% were ALS. This is that advanced level of service that we're able to provide, and this is based off of call types, what we're doing and what we're responding to. This meets the standard as far as in the industry and what we're licensed for and the type of calls that we're actually running. Previously, we were flip-flop on these numbers. We were about 60 to 70% BLS and 30% ALS. That has a huge contribution to the increase in revenues. We're actually seeing an increase in revenues based off the based off the percentage that's being built by the way that they're being coded. And we'll also see a further increase once we continue on with our dispatch billing, because that's an added tool that CMS has provided for us to follow. So impacts of COVID. We saw on the EMS side, as far as not that bad of a decrease of transports over the peak COVID times that we submitted as far as looking at March, April, May, and June. We saw about a 2% decrease on EMS transports because people were they were very cautious about going to the hospital. I don't want to go catch COVID, and they were thinking twice about going to the hospital at those times. We did see a drastic decrease in our call volume on fire-related calls. But as we see this, another trend that we're starting to see with these COVID-related calls are the term that it's taken to process these payments. They're now taking a little bit longer. There's new rules that are coming out from CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid, as far as a balance billing. There might be some changes coming up, and we're expecting to receive some notice of that in the next month or two. But one key highlight, because of our credentialing and being up to date with all the requirements of Medicare and Medicaid, we saw an additional fund that was awarded to the city of $19,317 that we received, I want to say about 45 days ago, and that was for the CARES Act. So because we provide services for Medicaid and Medicare patients, they awarded us $19,000. So our AR that we were talking about earlier on, account receivable, about 58% of them are in that total age group as far as greater than 120 days. Our target's to be as far as 75% in comparison to our payer groups, but we want to be no more than about 85 days. Once we get those Medicare claims or Medicaid claims to be released, that's going to decrease that percentage. And once we go over this first wave, and we know as far as what we're going to do with your direction of moving claims to write-off, moving claims to a collection company, those ARs are going to decrease on those stats. So when I told you at the 150-day mark, they just don't disappear. What we've done is we've moved them over to a separate line so that we could cover as far as and be able to present to you where we're at on these bad debts. And when we look at our bad debts, the majority of it, 90% of it, like I told you early on, was based off of Medicare and Medicaid patients, contractual agreements that we have. That's the biggest chunk of it, $785,000. Look at bad address. This is something that we're working with our providers, and we're looking at system upgrades where we could capture identification of a driver's license or some type of ID. Individuals will give us an address if they're able to do so. Sometimes we get a fraudulent address that they give us something totally bogus and different, and then that's where we start trying to work these reports backwards. Of that 85,000, so you can see that there is a debit down at the bottom for a bad address because we were able to find $4,000 worth of adjusted amount that we could bill for people once we found the correct address for them. But they do have a system that they're running through as far as not only comparing it to the hospital's address, comparing it as far as in that national database for any address. So now our crews are trained to anybody as far as, do you have a previous address that was recorded on some type of identification? And from there, we could track backwards or forward your current address. Refunds to patients, this is where we're entering the 60-day mark. We're going to be doing some refunds as far as some takebacks and refunds. This is very, very minimal. Everything as far as has been triple and double checked before it's actually been submitted out. So we feel comfortable reporting that back to you. The only thing it could be is an overpayment, somebody that saw their explanation of benefits and paid on that as well as what they actually, their insurance had already paid. When we look at that line 7,700, where I was telling you about those contractual agreements, we're also going to have a breakdown for you of what that details and where did that contractual agreement come from for that write-off. What percentage per claim per each individual person that we transport? Was it Medicare? Was it TRICARE, Medicaid? And why it was agreed upon as far as of that rate. Was it the base rate? Was it the mileage that was decreased? Blue Cross and Blue Shield do have some even though they're a non-participating partner, they do have some contractual agreements there. We're also looking at, as far as one of the key things, we did not go into agreement with any law firms because we know that these self-pays typically could be a vehicle accident that doesn't get settled, the PIP gets exhausted, and they send as far as a letter, promissory letter, where we won't receive payments for a couple of years down the road on that. So we've left it at the same rate instead of taking a negotiated rate, which is something that will be presented at the year-end meeting for your direction. What we intend to do next, like we said, as far as raising our revenues from the 1.2 to the 1.6, we're also going to be submitting at the year-end a full compliancy plan to you with the policies and procedures, and for you to make the decisions on how you want us to move forward once we've completed that 150-day mark. Do you want us to go to collections? Do you want us to not? What small balances, payment plan opportunities that you want to do, and also a full risk assessment as far as where we're at year-end with our billing program. Is there any questions?
Any questions?
I had two and now I have three. So if you go back to the executive summary where you highlight the first round of kind of gross charges and stuff like that,
Yes,
I
sir.
just want to align on terminology. When you say collections, I was using that synonymous with bad debt, meaning they're past due.
Collection.
But you're saying
Yes.
just we've received the charged amount from whoever we're charging for
Correct.
that
Yes, sir.
service. So really, if I'm looking at this, the adjusted gross minus the collection, minus the bad debt, minus the receivable should net out.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, and you kind of touched on your last slide. The two questions I had leading into that were, you know, obviously when we transport Medicaid or Medicare, there's a perverse incentive for the city to charge a higher fee of service because for every dollar we're getting, you know, more dollars in return. So when you talk BLS, you talk ALS, do you all have checklist of, you know, or documenting the fact that there was a true need to go to ALS so that we can charge for that higher amount?
Yes, sir.
And will that be part of the policy that you present to us?
Yes. So right now, it's actually based off of procedures. With our billing company, once we submit our report, the billing company then has somebody that's doing a quality assessment as far as review of that sheet. We do the clinical verification of it, but they also do documentation. CMS is detailed out in their policies as far as depending on what procedures you do, was a cardiac monitor needed? Did you do a 12-lead? Depending on how many medications, how many doses that you provided for that patient in that transport period, will upcharge that call from a BLS to an ALS. But the biggest policy change there is going to be when we do that full priority dispatching, it's a national standard of what calls that are dispatched meet the ALS levels, which calls meet a BLS level. And then when they do the report of the call, if we got dispatched to a toe pain, but it ended up being a heart attack, that would be an ALS. But based off how it's dispatched right from the get-go as a toe pain, it would be a BLS. So they would actually be able to use the assessment rule and upcharge that to an ALS.
Okay. And then the only other piece, and I'm assuming that'll be part of the policy that you present at the end of the year, but just that checks and balances aspect of things. So you mentioned that there's an external auditor. Is that external in the sense that they would just audit City of Apopka, or do we also have external audits from, say, Medicare, Medicaid, to make sure that our process is in place and valid enough for them to have confidence that we're doing what we need to be doing?
So right now, the auditing portion that I listed on here is from our billing company, from a standpoint of how many calls were actually ALS versus BLS, what was our first pass submission, the denial rates. We do a true audit of that at the year end, but for Medicaid and Medicare purposes, those are random. So they have a TPE audit, it's a target probe Educate, they'll come out and they'll list X amount of reports, and then you have to go into that phase of the auditing portion and supply them with the reports. And that's usually done when any red flag appears, anything that comes to mind as far as, or any drastic changes that they see that would cause an audit, or it's just random selection.
Okay. And then last thing, just when you put together that policy for later review, what is the dynamic between, and you touched on I think the second slide in terms of the billing team, there's finance involvement, there's fire involvement. What is that kind of interaction model? And then ultimately, who's responsible for billing?
Correct.
Who at the end of the day says, I'm putting my name on this, this is valid, this is what was charged, this is what was received, and this is right, true.
When we moved forward, as far as, and that's a good point, good question. Each individual component that's done, that expenditure report, when we validate as far as credentialing, those hold an individual liable for it, making sure that everything is correct, and that's the individual that's actually held liable. And the scary part of it is that you're entrusting that every man and woman that's filing those claims as far as is doing the correct thing. For the billing aspect of it, for the credentialing, that was my name that was submitted along with it, with the approval of CMS. And that's for all of our payers. Change Healthcare also has a business agreement with us that everything is being submitted correctly. So they do share some of the responsibility there in the liability with our contract. But each individual component that's done separately has to have a final sign-off on it, where that person is certifying, and we had to get an outside source for that public expenditure report. There was a CPA that was added on to that those were correct.
Okay, good. Commissioner Smith?
And I guess my only question to you, outstanding report also, is that do you have the option of debating whether or not it should have been an ALS or BLS?
Depending on the denial. So if we submitted it in as an ALS and it came back as a denied, then we could debate bring back as far as any supporting documentation, why it makes it that. But our systems are set up pretty good where, one, we shouldn't be receiving a denial because we're not submitting it unless, one, the coding team has verified that and documented it and submitted it with the supporting documents to it. In that rare occasion, yes, we can, but it comes down to that payer. And I'll give you an example. There was a word that was used as ambulatory. We picked a patient from the ground and moved them onto the stretcher. CMS, in the narrative, the verbiage was the patient ambulated to the stretcher. Well, ambulate means that the person could be walking, and they walked over to that stretcher. That claim was denied because of that. One word that was submitted in there, which was incorrect when we did a fact check and double reviewed that call. They actually picked the patient up from the ground and lifted him up onto the stretcher. But those kind of key little documentation things are things that will make a call not medically necessary or necessary for transport. But before anything's submitted, and that's what we'll review internally as far as any of those claims are not submitted, and see what happened. Was it because of a missing signature? Was it because we did not gather more information? Those claims are never processed. They're moved over to the end, and we do a monthly review on those, bad address, messy signatures, anything that comes that was a error on our part, but from the coding perspective with the software and the systems that they use, as far as it's being not only checked through their coding team, they also have a QA team, and we're verifying that all the documentation is needed to submit that.
All right, excellent report.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I got a couple questions for
Yes,
you,
sir.
Kat, real quick. If you look back at the ALS versus the BLS charges with NEB versus Change Healthcare, any idea what that would have racked up as far as additional revenue from the last 8, 10 years, however how long we've had NEB? Any idea what that would?
It'd be hard to estimate based off of, if we use the same parameters, same bill type, same call type, it could have been an approval rating that caused it to increase as far as more in revenue that was submitted in. But just based off of a BLS call to an ALS call, we're looking at several $100s in difference, times if you flip the percentages from what we received of almost near 70% BLS to an ALS, I mean, that's a significant difference as far as, it would be over $1 million as far as an estimate, but it would have to be.
Per year?
Yes, it would have to be audited and make sure.
Right,
that
no,
it's
I get
traced
it,
and
but, so
correctly.
now we're talking for 10 years, that's $10 million. So basically enough money to, we could have paid for Station 5 and 6 and had a ladder truck in each one of them, but, okay. What, the difference in reports between Change Healthcare and NEB, did NEB give us any reports? And
We did receive from our previous billing company as far as reports. The level that these are detailed as far as these reports and how we're able to access the data is the key difference. In the prior, not to bash or go negative, just what we're presented with today, we have access to our previous records. We can see what was billed, why it was billed, and at what level it was billed at. That's something that it's running monthly, it's dynamic, we can see it per each individual patient that we're actually transporting. So there's more flow of information, just not comparing the reports and actually all the information that's provided to us. We have more information today than we did in the past.
okay. And the last thing, I know is interesting, when we were trying to get this all converted over to Change Healthcare, come to find out that the billing agent for the city of Apopka was Glenn Irby. Do you remember?
Yes.
And what I thought was kind of disturbing is that Glenn Irby didn't even know he was the manager or whatever under the, auspices of Medicare and Medicaid. I mean, if you were a betting man, would you say that there's a really good chance, an almost overwhelming chance that the Medicare and Medicaid will come in the next year or so and audit our books based on the mess that we can't even uncover, right? I mean, we hadn't even been able to get all the books we need to even determine what we've been owed and haven't gotten. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, just to verify with counsel as far as, because I know it's still open litigation.
As far as just records, we're just not getting any records.
To my knowledge, no, there has been difficulty in obtaining the records from the previous provider because
Okay.
of the question as to where they're located. Now, these are things that are currently
Yeah,
within litigation, so I don't want to go too much into them
Yeah,
at
right,
this
I
present
get it.
time. But on the 10,000-foot view down, there has been an issue regarding record keeping from the previous providers.
and when we move from the ALS to BLS ratio changes, are we pretty certain we're going to get a Medicare, Medicaid audit? Would you be fairly, if you were?
Everything indicates as far as any substantial change would be from filing, we're licensed as a ALS provider. We're not a BLS provider. We can render BLS services, but we're licensed at the higher level there. A change in anything as far as from one key aspect of you're always providing majority of it is a BLS, and then all of a sudden, a provider changes when there's no change in their licensing, should throw up a red flag. I'm not hoping for an audit, to be honest with anybody, but it definitely does fear, I do have fear that that will trigger an audit.
And if we don't even have the paperwork to even plead our case, how are we going to win that battle?
And that is the key thing as far as our records, the way that they're stored,
Okay.
is the access of those records and.
Super. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you, Captain. I hate to put you on the spot there. Thank
No
you.
problem.
Appreciate that.
Sir.
All right. Thank you. Next up, fair housing presentation, Melissa Fox and
Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Fox. I'm with Fred Fox Enterprises. The purpose of my presentation today is just to inform the public as well as the city of the federal fair housing requirements. Title 42 of the United States Code prohibits discrimination in housing-related actions, including the sale, rental, or financing of dwellings. Discrimination includes refusing to rent to someone, steering someone away from a particular type of housing or neighborhood, enacting zoning measures to exclude particular groups because of membership in a protected class. The protected classes include race, color, religion, national origin, sex, familial status, and disability. These are just the federal protected classes. There can be within the state and local levels additional protected classes, but these are the ones that are within the federal. What is prohibited? No one may take any of the following actions based on race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, or national origin. Refuse to rent or sell housing, refuse to negotiate for housing, set different terms, conditions, or privileges for sale or rental of a dwelling, falsely deny that housing is available for inspection, sale, or rental, for profit, persuade or try to persuade homeowners to sell or rent dwellings by suggesting that people of a particular race, age, sex, etc. have moved or about to move into the neighborhood, or deny any person access to, membership, or participation in any organization, facility, or service related to the sale or rental of dwellings. There is housing protection for families with children. It is unlawful to discriminate against a person whose household includes one or more children who are under the age of 18. This is known as familial status, and it's in which one or more minor children live with a parent or legal custodian. There's additional protection if you have a disability. If you have a physical or mental disability, including hearing, mobility, and visual impairments, cancer, chronic mental illness, HIV/AIDS, that substantially limits one or more major life activities, or you are regarded as having such a disability, a housing provider may not refuse to let you make reasonable modifications to your dwelling at your expense. A landlord may permit changes only if you agree to restore the property to its original condition when you move. For example, a building with a no pets policy must allow a visually impaired tenant to keep a guide dog. There was also recently, a few years back, in the city of Jacksonville, there was a tenant that was in a wheelchair, and they wanted permission to put in a handicap ramp so that they could access the front. And it was found that they were in violation of the Federal Fair Housing Code by not allowing that tenant to put it in. Now, the landlord, can permit those changes, provided that at the end of the lease, the tenant removes the ramp and it's restored back to its original condition. There is housing that is exempt. The Federal Fair Housing Act exempts owner-occupied buildings with no more than 4 units and single-family housing sold or rented without the use of a broker. So if you're a private homeowner and you have 1 additional home, 2 additional homes that you're going to rent out or you're going to sell, you're actually exempt from Federal Fair Housing Act. Additionally, senior housing exemption. This is the one where it exempts senior housing facilities, the 55-plus communities. Those kind of communities, those are exempt, but they have gone through a state or federal program that HUD has determined to be specifically designed and operated to assist elderly persons. They can't just call themselves that. They have to go through the certification from HUD to actually be designated as a 55 or 62-plus community. If you think your rights have been violated, you can contact the following. You can always contact the city. You can do it on a local level. You can also contact the state. You can contact the Florida Commission on Human Relations. You can go up to a higher level with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. You can contact the Southeast Regional Office, that's in Atlanta, Georgia. And then you can also go up, to the federal level as the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development at Washington, D.C. What you'll need to provide. You'll need to provide your name and address, the name and address of the person your complaint is against, the address or other identification of the housing involved, a short description of the alleged violation, and then the date of the alleged violation. Now, the City of Apopka does have a local ordinance, and it does include steps and time limits in which complaints must be submitted and responses provided. What happens when you file a complaint? The office receiving the complaint will notify the person filing the complaint and the violator of the filing of your complaint and allow the respondent time to respond. The office will investigate the complaint and determine whether there is reasonable cause to believe that the respondent has violated the Federal Fair Housing Act. You will be notified if HUD cannot complete its investigation within 100 days of filing, and it will provide reason for the delay. During the complaint investigation, HUD is required to offer you and the respondent the opportunity to voluntarily resolve your complaint with a conciliation agreement. I know that was a lot of information, but I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any at this time.
Edward, you want to kind of, I don't know if everybody knows where we're at, what this was about, but maybe you want to kind of.
Well, and I think, I was going to ask,
Okay.
Melissa wouldn't mind,
Yeah.
that this is part of the process that we have to go through for
Yeah.
the filing of the
Okay.
the
Right.
grant. So if you'll explain that.
And further on in the agenda, you'll notice that there is a first public hearing on a Small Cities Community Development Block Grant. This is one of the steps in submitting that application. It's to hold a fair housing workshop that's available for local elected officials as well as the public. It was advertised, and this gets you extra points in your application.
Okay.
If you've completed this.
Great. Thank you, Melissa.
Okay.
Any questions for Melissa? Good? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Okay. Edward, any adjustments to the agenda?
No, Mayor, there are no changes to the agenda.
Okay. Public comment. Susan.
We have three.
Okay.
We have Carlos Diaz. He is from Apopka. He states, he just says, "Hello, wanted to send a shout out to Apopka lawyer for revising the great new deal with tourist development." Now that Apopka also can work on the development, I think would be great to sell some of those parcels to Bend Development. They are working on the Florida Town Center and several other areas in Apopka, and it seems for eager to complete those development. A healthy competition between developers will benefit Apopka and South Apopka. That needs more development. Great job, guys. Okay, then we have another one from Lisa Bennett. She writes, "I heard that Apopka will begin construction on a bike trail on 6th Street to the city center. That is fantastic news. Wanted to thank the mayor and commissioners for leading South Apopka in the right direction. The downtown center is really going to bring Apopka in the next level. Great job, Apopka leaders and staff." Okay, and then I have, we do have a public comment
Okay.
from Todd Bengston.
Thank you. Hello, Mayor and Council. For those who don't know me, my name is Todd Banks, and I live in the city. I'm also an employee of the Apopka Fire Department and a member of the Fire Pension Board. I come before you today to speak about the employees and the raises in next year's budget. I haven't been asked by anyone to come do this, but I've been hearing conversations around the city, and I just think it's appropriate to come here and speak to you all. And as fancy speech that I have, I'd kind of like to speak more from the heart and as just a family member of that we're all in this together. I can only speak for the fire department. And I'd like to say we know everything that's going on right now with the COVID and all the exposure to it, and we're working hard. Nobody has asked us to do anything beyond what we signed up to do. We just had some few members test positive last weekend, with one actually being admitted to the hospital. Our families are being exposed to it at home and just pretty sick with it also, but that's what we signed off for. We understand that. Chief Wylam and Chief Sanchez has put together an awesome program of getting all the equipment that they can get for us to protect ourselves, been testing us when needed. And once again, we know what we signed up for, and we're here to do that. Another thing about the Apopka Fire Department is we work the most hours in the state of Florida. There's not a fire department that works more hours than us. Where we do have a good starting pay, when you start adding all the hours together for annual salary, it starts lowering us in comparison to others. For example, is actually 20 40-hour more work weeks the fire departments work in a year. We have to work 5 more months, basically, of 40-hour work weeks, because we do 56 hours a week. So more exposure, more time away from the family, more exposure to the illness going on out there. I'm glad Chief Sanchez got to make that presentation, because that was one of the big things is that I use as a mid-level manager is the evaluations I have about report writing and all that stuff. And Chief Wylam come and told us at our officers meeting that we're going to this billing system and we're gonna make it work. We gotta get this stuff right, we gotta get it cleaned up. Chief Sanchez is, I don't wanna say been beating into us, but he is on us all the time about our reports, how to do them right. Regularly brings us examples of if one word's wrong, we don't get paid. Regularly brings us examples that if we use McDonald's because we picked up the homeless person there at McDonald's, we don't get paid. I mean, he regularly comes to us. And as a person that does the evaluations, that's something that I grade them on, how much interaction or negative interaction from Chief Sanchez I get about an employee not doing the reports right. So we know the fire department spends money, we get that. And we don't bring in a lot, but we're trying to do it with this program. And I believe really everyone has stepped up, and we're really trying to help the city collect deserved money, or more of the deserved money. The problem's gonna be is when I go to do the evaluations, all the other fire departments, all their friends, all their brothers that work at other places are getting raises next year because it's in their contracts. They get a set number, and they're going to be getting it. We're not. We have a ton of positives to work here. It's awesome working here. This has been the best experience of my life coming here, besides marrying my wife. I'll throw that in there because it's true. But working here is the greatest thing I've ever done in my life, is coming to work here. But they're going to get raises. And when you look at our budget and the way it's done, you have the hard numbers that Edward and finance and everyone gives you, that where you plug in how much fuel's going to be, and insurances, and repairs, and everything from the copy machine, all hard numbers they're giving you. Well, the only category that has flexibility of movement in it is the employee's merit raises that you can squeeze or not. And it just gives the appearance, I'm sure it's not what is meant to be done, but it gives the appearance of balancing a budget on the employee's back. Because that's the area that we can squeeze. We know what fuel's gonna be, that has to be that price. There's nothing you can do about that. So it's just kind of puts me in a position next year when I have to do an evaluation, I look at them, and I already have people that are looking other places. I hate that, but they're looking. They hear all the time about our pension problems. They hear about the retirees' medical issues. Now they hear no raises. They just want stability. They want just trust and stability. They're just confused. So they are looking at other places. And it's not because of the fire chief. It isn't because it isn't great to work here. They're not sure what the next step's going to be. They didn't come here to become millionaires. We didn't expect a big financial windfall coming to work for the government. We just want to enjoy work, get compensated accordingly, and go from there. I mean, we have a low millage rate. We know that. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I mean,
I'm passionate. I believe about it.
I know, you're 4 minutes, I just.
We have a low millage rate, and sometimes being the low millage rate causes a problem somewhere else. You know, we don't have the funds to do things. So we're a full-service city, and we do a darn good job. And I doubt there's any questions, but I'd love to answer any.
And thank you for those comments. And I don't know, because we all received that letter, I don't know if it's planning to be read into public comment. I don't know the rules behind it. Obviously, they asked for it to be read, but if my understanding, if they don't provide a name, it doesn't get read. Okay. But it's along the same lines, right? So for public awareness, we all received a letter. I think it was posted in the Apopka Voice today. I don't know if the chief is picking it up either, but along the same lines, right? I struggle because, you know, almost a month ago, we sat in this room for hours on end in budget workshops, and this is the first that we're hearing of displeasure and the strategy that staff has gone in terms of the 1% COLA. So,
We have no opportunity to speak.
well, there's plenty of opportunity. I mean, so
As an
case in point, so 2 days ago, we got that anonymous letter. My email is open 24 hours a day. So if people are upset around the budget and merit increases and things like that, I'm always open. I'm always available, but this is the first I'm hearing of it. Just factually speaking, good, bad, or indifferent, it's just the first time I'm hearing of
100%
it.
understand.
And, you know, and just to kind of pick up on some of the things that you said too is, you know, employee pay doesn't fluctuate. Now, it can go up, but it's gonna generally stay static unless you get merit increase, right? So that's a pretty static amount. It's gonna continually rise because the cost of goods or the cost of services or the cost of employment is always going to rise. It's always gonna be more expensive to do it next year than it is to do it this year. The fluidity, I think, is more on capital expenditures, i.e. on fire. If we're talking fire, you have fire stations to deal with, you have fire trucks, multi-million-dollar trucks, apparatus that we've heavily invested in. And those have to be factored into the quality of life or quality of job or quality of work, not just, you know, 2% this year, 3% this year, 6%, whatever the case might be. There's always multi-pronged approach to a compensation package, and not all of it is reflected in base salary. You know, when we looked at the salary study this past year, we looked at all, police, fire, mayor's salary, you know, and we made some adjustments there. You know, I'm flipping over to the police argument at this point too. You know, we're talking about a compensation or a salary study that is going to attract talent. From my understanding, we have open positions still on the police department. We just took action as a council, and I'm talking for myself, not representing anybody else up here. But we increased the starting pay of our police department. And I feel like, okay, that's been disregarded. And we're back to, let's just key in on merit increase pool. I don't think anybody's disputing the fact that we're in a very weird economic situation right now. There's still some uncertainty, even from where I sit on the council level, what our final revenue number is gonna be for this year. So that could certainly come in as we finalize the budget. We may realize that we totally undercut, and there's revenue now to be able to support maybe bringing merit increases back on the table. I'm not sure. I don't know. But from all the stuff that I've gotten from where I sit, I haven't seen anything from staff to say, Kyle, you know, we really need to contemplate merit, or anybody that presented during the budget workshop that said, hey, we really need to, you know, go to bat for merit increases because we're not getting it. The only thing that I heard about was a 1% COLA when we were doing our trim hearing for that particular city council meeting. So my advice to anybody that's gonna talk about merit increase is that we're a month behind. You know, and I totally agree with you that our millage rate is punitively low to our city. We've got infrastructure, we've got beautification. I'm not gonna talk merit because I gut feeling wise, I think that we've increased merit pay head and shoulders above other benchmark municipalities. But we've got a lot of costs that they're all sourced from the general fund. We've got to pay police, we've got to pay fire, we've got to pay parks and recs. Parks and recs, I think, is underserved. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to do some very much marked improvement within our city. It all comes from the same source of dollars that we've got to be very smart in how we're putting this out. I don't think that we were entertaining a budget that had a whole bunch of fat in it. So it's not like we're siphoning money from police and fire away to things that just don't make any sense. I didn't see that. Now I could be proven wrong. But you know, my litmus test is, you know, when we look at police, when we look at fire, when we look at how much money we're investing in our public safety, is it generally in line with our other municipalities? And the percentages that I see, they're fairly in line. So roughly 32%, give or take, for both police and fire. So almost 65% of for every dollar that we spend 65 cents on public safety. And that's money very well served. We have a great 2 departments. But, you know, in my line of work, and I think a lot of industry, compensation is always going to be something that's never perfect. There's always going to be this idea that people are underpaid or not getting what they deserve or what the market demands. Some of that is going to cause attrition in our departments. It's going to happen. We're not going to be able to retain simply off compensation. But I think there's more to the story. From where I sit, I need hard solutions to the problem.
I agree. No one's asked me. No one's put
No.
to me when they did the salary study. I would have loved to have been involved. I asked if I could be involved. There's things that weren't factored. The hours that the Apopka firefighters work compared to other jurisdictions drops us way down. When you're just looking at salary, annual salary, that's a whole different thing. You have to break it down and look at it. Our police and fire start at the same pay. But hourly, we don't, because they work 40 hours a week, we work 56. We know the hours when we came here, and when people came here from Sanford, we got that big group that came from Sanford, they looked at our pension, they knew the hours, but, all right, the pay was decent, the pension's good. Now they hear the conversations about the pension and about the retiree medical, and now no merit raises, so it's thinking, no, I'm just telling you, this is God's honest truth. They're thinking, all right, what did I do? Did I just make a mistake? Because that was one of the things we touted, was our merit raises. Yeah, you're not getting paid for school, or you're not getting paid for that, but we will give you a good raise if you come here and bust butt.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, when we're talking the merit, then the final decision that we have on merit, right? If we go down the path that we were all told that in the budget as it stands right now, we've got 1% COLA budgeted. If I'm to entertain what was outlined in the letter from the anonymous police officers.
I don't even know what that is.
Beyond just the threat of unionization, I've got to understand what the ask is. I mean, they say we want merit increase. What does that mean? Is that 2%? Is that 3%? Is that 4, 5, 6? What is it? What I want from staff is for me to be able to make an educated decision, I've got to understand what's been our historical trend. If over time in history, for the past 10 years, people on average are getting 5% merit increase, and let's just say the number.
Sure.
For coming in every year, they get 5%. And this is hypothetical. And let's say that that's happened the past 10 years. And yet this year, in the midst of COVID, in the midst of uncertainty around our budget, we're saying that we've got to be mindful of that as we're trying to get to the end of job on budget. And then you factor in, we just did a salary study, some salary revisions, plus the fact that we have a pension program that, when we did the salary study, is 30% higher than an average benchmark pension program in the area. You start to say to yourself, okay, this might be an outlier year. And I get it. It's not going to be well received through the rank and file. I get that. But it's a possibility. So what I would want to see from staff is, what is that trend? What is the trend around merit increase? Because I've got to have some starting point. I can't just have a letter that says, we need merit increase. I don't know what that means. 2, I want to understand, why do we attrite? When people leave the city of Apopka, whether that be on fire, whether that be on police, what for? Is it voluntary? Is it through retirement? Involuntary? They got fired? And if they left voluntarily and they went to another agency, what agency did they go to? And let's understand, is that financially driven? Are we still out of the mark in terms of what we pay our rescue personnel or our public safety personnel? Because I've got to have something to react to. Even in the police letter, again, I'm talking from me because it was addressed to me, is you list things like, not having abuse of force or not damaging police vehicles. This is table stakes stuff, right? I mean, this isn't, you don't get 6% for making sure that you don't damage your property or city property. So come to me with a plan, and I'm certainly willing to talk through it and have the conversation. I'm always open, so contact me,
I don't believe
email
I'm
me.
allowed
Happy
to
to
talk
happy to
to
discuss
that, am
it.
I can go talk to it. I thought they weren't supposed to get involved.
Our charter just says that I can't instruct you as a staff
Okay.
member to do anything. Anybody in this room
I
can
would
come
love
in.
to, I don't even know the letter.
Yeah.
Probably sounds like I don't want to read the letter. I'm not sure what that is. This is just common sense. I just want you to know as a mid-level manager that it's going to be happening everywhere else, and I'm going to have to be answering the questions. It puts Chief Wylam in a tough spot. It puts you all in a tough spot. And I'm not saying that there isn't a happy medium, but from 6 to 0 is a heck of a,
Well, not 6-0, 6-1.
Well,
6 was not,
merit,
and
I don't
let's,
know the
let's be honest, you know, the 6% you guys got, your average increase at the fire was 6.2%.
but do you know why? You say that, but do you know why? It's because of promotions. So when you promote, you put,
So everybody got promoted then?
no, it's on average. When you take the promotion and the people have to get a double hit, you got to get your evaluation, then you get the
And then-
raise. So that's where the increase
And then
is.
Todd, did you get I mean, when was the last time you got a raise? Last year?
This year is the first time in 6
Okay,
years.
6 years, you hadn't got a raise, and you got one this year.
Right.
Okay, all right.
No, and that data, but,
Okay, I work. I'm not saying I don't work for it.
but,
I
it-
didn't
but,
say you
in-
didn't either, but I'm saying we made sure you got a raise this year.
Okay,
For all the
I
people,
just
the
think-
middle management
I
that
just
didn't,
thought
haven't
it would
gotten
be
raises, they got
appropriate-
raised this year.
Yes, sir. I just thought it would be appropriate for me to share with you all the sentiments. I'm not looking for a fight. I'm looking to work with you all and try to do something.
and absolutely, and I appreciate that, because again, from the time that we had our budget workshop and the trim hearing up until 2 days ago, and then now through your concerns that you're voicing here, and thank you for doing so, I was deaf of the conversation.
I've
So,
never had the opportunity, or I don't know that we've ever said, hey, employees, do you want to come do this, be involved in it? I don't know how the merit raise parts goes. As long as I've worked there, I've never been asked that
okay.
part. But I
And
would
then,
love to.
and the only other piece, so to the mayor's point, Edward, if we can just normalize, you know, when we talk merit increase, can we have a normalized view that says true merit versus factoring in promotion type of, because it is worth calling that out in a view
Commissioner,
like that.
absolutely. We are pulling those numbers as we speak. We've been working on that for a couple days now. We have to pull it out of our system, and like you said, we've got to kind of decipher the promotions versus the raises, but we're pulling those numbers out for you so that you can see them. And I will tell you, they're coming very close in line with what you've seen in your pension meetings. They're very, very close in line with, I will tell you this, and I've told you this for 2 years now as I sit here, that we have a merit program of from 0 to 6. We have 5s and 6s. So that's where you're going to see that. I don't want you to be shocked, but we're putting those numbers together, and you're going to see that within our public safety, we have hardly very few that get below a 5 or 6. So, but we're putting those numbers together so that you can see that overall how that,
Yeah.
how what we've been given over the years.
Right.
We're trying to
And
do a
it-
5-10 year.
And it's come up, I mean, every budget workshop really that I've been a part of since I've been on council, this topic comes up to a certain extent. And I think, again, having the data pool of stuff to make a factual decision on what we're going to do in final budget is helpful. So, you know, even the maturity of performance reviews, you know, how are they documented? How are employees calibrated against each other? Because again, my team that I manage at my professional office, I get a pool of dollars, and let's call that pool of dollars 3%. That doesn't mean everybody's going to get 3%. It means that I'm going to calibrate my resources and say, John over here performed better than Susie over here, and vice versa. And this resource, I want to reward that great behavior, and I'm going to give them 6%. This resource over there has some work to do. Maybe only gets 1% or 2%. But that's got to happen, because then that protects morale, it motivates people to do a better job, and it's not just this kind of peanut butter, I'm going to give everybody the same percentage. And so, I definitely want to incentivize our police and fire.
Absolutely.
I mean, just think about the environment that we're in. We are no Minneapolis board up here. And I'm sorry, I'm talking the police letter again. We want to fund our public safety agencies. I think we're all self-aware that, things happen on an individual basis where you have some people that put a black eye on an agency, but, we've all sat up here and publicly professed our love for police and fire, and we want to do what's right by them, and certainly so. I mean, police, we just erected a $2 million communications tower so that people aren't using their cell phones to call in for dispatch and things like this. So, there's compensation, there's retirement, there's capital expenditures that all have to be factored into this idea of what we're investing in the people that are working for the city of Apopka. But again, thank you for bringing it up. I see it as.
Thank you
kind
for
of-
listening, and I would love to have further conversations. I believe we're all in it together.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes, I just want to make sure that you understand that we have the most respect for our fire department and our police
That is
department.
not even a
And
question.
we want you all to feel that you're respected and that the services you provide to our citizens is beyond rapport. That the citizens always rave about the community events that even our fire and police department participate in our city. And I understand the concern you have in your position in reference to the merit pay. Having been a teacher for 40 years, there were several years where I didn't get a raise either. So I understand, but I hope that our fire and police department would understand that we are in the midst of an economic decline and that this may be a temporary condition, and hopefully that they won't leave because of a 1 year that there's a possibility that you will not receive the merit raise. Because in my opinion, that all the cities and all departments are going through the same financial crisis. So no matter where they go, they're probably going to run into that same thing. So I wouldn't want them to jump out the pot and into the fire. And so I'm asking if they would be patient with us and understand the position that we're in this year, and consider that when we're talking about merit raises. But we value you and we want you to be paid. And I think that we need to look at the evaluation that we're doing when we talk about merit. When we talk about it, everybody's getting a 5 and a 6, and there are no 1s, 2s, 3s, or 4s. Maybe we need to look at that system. The state looked at Orange County schools when everybody was being graded excellent and was getting the most of the merit pay. And so maybe we need to evaluate that as well at the system we're using. But we want to make sure that both fire and police understand that we value you and we want to compensate you. But this year is a year when we're in an economic decline and it's going to be slim pickings. But we don't want you to jump off the ship.
You're stuck with me. I'm
And
not
then the
gonna
last
agree.
thing I want to say is, the fire department's done a great job. The leadership team at the fire department this year alone will probably save us about $1.3 million, which helps us to balance a budget that's pretty weak. And the last thing I'm going to say, and if I've said it once, I've said it 100 times, we are not cutting the pension and we're not cutting the medical benefits. I don't care what you guys keep saying out there, but I am not going to cut them. As long as I'm mayor, we're not going to cut the benefits. How many times do I need to tell y'all that?
Okay, Mayor, I'm just going off
No,
your.
I'm just telling you. You need to tell your guys out there that I'm not cutting the pensions and I'm not cutting the $8,228 per retiree that we're paying this year. Okay?
I thought I heard you say that. I must be mistaken. I apologize. All right. Thank you.
And my last comment is going to be that.
I appreciate very much what you said. We love working here.
Great.
I know the mayor likes the fire department, the police department, and Public Works too, who really, I believe Public Works is really the backbone of the city. That's everything you see. That's your water, your sewer, your parks, the streets cleans up. I mean, they're as important as all of us. So I don't at all feel that we're not appreciated at all. And I'm only speaking for myself, but I know that that's the sentiment going around, and I thought it would be appropriate to have the conversation.
We appreciate that.
All right.
And the last thing I want to say is that in reference to the letter that we received, it has nothing to do with you, from the anonymous person from the police department, is that I view individuals that are afraid to put their names on the letter as cowards. I think that if you're going to do that, you ought to be man enough, woman enough to put your name on it. If there's a group of you, have all of them to sign the letter. And then when you do that, you need to give us something to compare to. You just send us a letter and say, this is what we want because somebody else is getting this. Well, I have no idea of knowing what somebody else is getting. So if you're going to do that, then present us with all the facts.
I agree, 100%. Thank you.
Okay, next up, consent agenda. Does anybody need to pull any of those items?
Mayor, I'm sorry. I have the one from.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. Commissioner Bankson wanted to read something into the record.
Okay, so this is regarding Commissioner Nolan, and here's his statement. He says, "I want to thank Commissioner Nolan for her service to Apopka, and I'm sure this was a difficult decision for her to make. As a lifelong citizen of Apopka with deep roots and family ties, I know her heart to serve came from a very special place. Her youthful enthusiasm was infectious, and I wish her and her family well in this new season of her life. Our prayers and gratitude go with her. Sincerely, Commissioner Bankson.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, consent agenda. Anybody need to pull any items off the consent agenda? Okay, if not, motion to approve consent agenda?
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner
Second.
Becker, second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, final development plan. Iglesia El Getsemani Church Building Expansion.
Good afternoon, Bobby House, Senior Planner. I'm going to take a stab at it. It's Iglesia El Getsemani, I think is what it is. So it's a final development plan detailing a 12,000 square foot addition to an existing place of worship. Property is located at 2585 West Orange Blossom Trail. It's 4.29 acres in size and is the location of the Iglesia El Getsemani Church. The site is accessed by Orange Blossom Trail and Highland Street, with the main portion of access, the main point of access located on Orange Blossom Trail. 2 stormwater ponds are proposed on the northern portion of the site. A total of 104 parking spaces, 5 of which will be for disabled persons, are located on site in accordance with the requirements of the Land Development Code. The landscape plan proposes a mix of canopy, understory trees, and shrubs per the requirements of the Land Development Code. Architectural elevations of the addition are consistent with the development design guidelines in the Land Development Code, as well as the existing building that's located on site. The Development Review Committee recommends approval, and the staff recommends approval. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them, and the applicant is here as well.
Okay, any questions for Bobby? Okay, applicant, anything to add? Jimmy?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. Jim Dombrowski, RCE Consultants. We're the engineer for the applicant, and we agree with everything per staff recommendations.
Super. All right, anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve the final development plan for the Iglesia El Getsemani Church Building Expansion.
So moved.
Got a
Second.
motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Becker. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, the FY19 Citizens Advisory Task Force recommendations on CDBG.
Mayor, Council, we have a new CDBG application that has been published from DEO, and the new funding year is funding year 19. We just completed funding year 15, and we're able to complete the Billy Dean Community Center. Melissa is here to go over our first public hearing. This is all a part of the process that we have to go through in order to submit the application. The process today that we have to follow is the presentation. We need to open it up for questions from you all, also offer the public any input they may have, and then we have to talk about the staff recommendation for the application, and then also give you the recommendation from the Citizen Advisory Task Force. And now I'm going to bring up Melissa Fox.
Good afternoon again. So the purpose of this is just to notify the city elected officials as well as the public that the city is eligible, and we're going to go over the 4 categories that you're actually eligible to apply under. The maximum CDBG grant amount that you're eligible to apply for is $750,000, and that's for 3 categories. The final category that I'll go over, you're actually eligible to apply for up to $1.5 million. But the 3 categories that are under the $750,000 threshold, the first is the housing rehabilitation category. And that's where you would actually, the city would actually go in and they would rehab if they're minor rehabs, or you would go in and actually do a demo relo. You would actually tear down the home and then replace it with a site-built home for owner-occupied, low to moderate income homes within the city limits of Apopka. So you're gonna do anywhere from 9 to 11 homes, where you would actually, you would have a work write-up completed. It would be determined if it was a major or minor rehab, or if it was in fact needed to just be, it was more cost-effective to just tear it down and build a new one. The second is a commercial revitalization. That's where you're doing work in your downtown area. So you're doing streetscaping, you're doing sidewalks, pedestrian malls, perhaps a parking lot, different things like that, building facade work to the downtown commercial area. In this case, your service area would need to be 51% low to moderate income. So for a commercial, your service area is the entire city limits because the city residents enjoy the downtown area. So you would need to make sure that you're at 51% low to moderate income. We'll go over those amounts on the next slide. The third is the neighborhood revitalization. That's the project you just finished up. It's can include infrastructure items in residential areas. There again, those residential areas would need to be low to moderate income areas. You can do things like water line replacement. You can do sewer line replacement, lift stations, water system improvements, sewer system improvements, paving, drainage, a community center, etc. And there again, your beneficiaries, the people who are actually going to, benefit from this activity, would need to be a 51% low to moderate income. And that's just the application threshold. You would want to get it a little bit higher to obtain the maximum points. Now, the fourth category is the one you're actually eligible to apply for up to 1.5. And that's under the economic development. And that's where you're going to provide infrastructure on city easement or property to facilitate a new business coming into or the expansion of an existing business. So I'm going to use an example of a project we've recently completed down in Glades County, the Love's Travel Stop. They needed a deceleration lane and they needed a sewer line ran out to their property. So CDBG paid for that, and in return, Love's agreed to hire and retain low to moderate income positions at their store. So for every $34,999.99 they receive, they have to create and retain for up to a year, or at least a year. They have to hire a low to moderate income person there within the city. So the first three categories, when you're applying, you have to pick one of them. Now you can have an open housing, an open commercial, or an open neighborhood and apply for an additional economic development. So that's kind of, economic development's kind of its own little category. You can have an open one and then apply for another economic development. So it's a little bit different on that one. When we refer to low to moderate income, these are limits that are set by HUD. Every year they go up or they go down. For the fiscal year 2020, for a family of 4, the maximum that a home can make and be qualified as a low to moderate income is $58,150. The CDBG applications are competitive, so you're competing with all other small cities and counties throughout the state of Florida. So we always try to work with communities to build up your application and make you as competitive as possible. There's 2 ways you can do that under neighborhood and commercial. And actually for leverage, you can also do this for housing, but for every $2,000 of leverage, you get an extra point in your application. So for up to a maximum of 25 points or 50,000. Now you can put more in to the project, but you're only going to get points for the first 50,000. For neighborhood and commercial revitalization projects only, if you go in to submit your application and you submit plans, engineered stamped plans and specifications with that, you get an additional 50 points on your application. Those are considered to be shovel ready, and those just show the state that you are motivated, you are ready to complete this work, and so that's why they give you those extra points. Now, you can't be reimbursed for the design cost of that. That's an expense that you just have to take on your own. So you have to remember that. So there's steps, and we're going through all of the steps in this process. So the first was to appoint a Citizens Advisory Task Force. That was completed. I believe that was completed back in April. The second was to advertise and hold a CATF meeting to discuss possible projects. We did hold a Citizens Advisory Task Force meeting on July 30th, and I'll be going over later the recommendation from that task force. The third is to advertise and hold a first public hearing. That's what we're doing this afternoon. The fourth is to advertise and hold a fair housing workshop. We previously completed that. And then the final step would be to advertise and hold a second public hearing. And that's where we're actually presenting a draft copy of the application in the category that you selected here today. At this time, we can open it up for any questions or comments on needs in the community.
Any questions? Commissioner Smith, anything?
Well, I guess I had one question. In one of the steps, it said that you could use the funds for sewer system improvements.
Yes.
Improvements that also include new sewers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that it seems to be, because community centers listed in there, neighborhood revitalization, is that what we had our last CB? Okay.
That's correct. Yes, you are under the neighborhood revitalization category.
I mean, it seems like you could potentially get more bang for your buck in something like, especially if there's critical infrastructure.
Yeah, well, but there's also, the chances are also, you need to talk about the, because that's,
Yeah.
it's a, you're playing
Because
the
you're
chances.
competing, the most popular category is obviously the neighborhood revitalization, because almost every community has major infrastructure needs. So we always try to work with the community on, and you have other factors in there. You have what's called a community-wide needs score, and that's determined by the state and the federal government. It's based on how many grants you've received in the past, different things like that. So your number will actually go down, and which it's kind of weird the way it does that, but it actually goes down. The more grants you receive, that number goes down. So we have to take that into account when you're not as competitive in certain categories as you would be in others because of different things like that.
Do you get additional points if you can prove success on prior use of these funds?
Unfortunately, you do not. I wish you did, and I wish that was one of the criteria that would go into your community-wide needs score, but it doesn't. It only reflects how much money you've actually received in grant awards.
And how many of these grants are available?
It's hard to say because they have a certain pot of money, and last year, some years they have funded everything because they didn't get that many in. But they typically fund anywhere around maybe 15 neighborhood applications, maybe about 10 to 15 housing, and then they fund 2 commercial revitalization. So commercial is extremely competitive as far as because of the number, but it's also, sometimes it can be an easier one because you don't have that many people submitting for commercial projects.
And that's the reason we use the team, of the Fox team, as I call them. Fred and Melissa is trying to figure out what, they kind of give us, okay, here's, you got this one, you got a 10% chance of getting it, but it's a big number, very flexible. This one, you're almost a slam dunk, but a much smaller number, and so.
Right.
And then there's a balance too.
That's-
So,
yeah.
so you've got what is going to cause success for us in the application process, but then on the other side of that coin is, so let's take housing rehabilitation, for example. You said could potentially fund 9 to 11 homes. What's the red tape? What's the other stuff about working with individual homeowners to actually action that money? From an ownership standpoint, because you could have 9 to 11 different owners of those properties, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
the
And
complexity
how
there.
it would work, if you move to proceed with, submitting a housing rehabilitation application, and you were funded, what would happen is you would advertise in the local newspaper that you're accepting applications. They have to own the home, so it has to be an owner-occupied home. They would submit their application of interest, and then from there, you would rank them. And, if you move forward with a housing, you're going to have to adopt a housing assistance plan. And basically, that plan says how you're going to run this grant. So you're going to have criteria. You're going to give additional points if they're elderly, if there's someone in the home that's disabled, different things like that. So once you have, let's just say you get 20 applications in, you're going to rank those 20, and then you're going to take possibly the first 12, and you're going to verify that they do in fact own the home. So you're going to pull title searches. And then from there, you're going to complete work write-ups. You're going to have a housing inspector come out and say, you know, what are the violations? You know, do they need a new roof? Is it just, you know, minor work? Is it, you know, just some plumbing or electrical issues? Or they could just say, you know what, it's gonna cost more to fix all these than it would be just to tear it down and build a new one in its place. And then from there, you know, you would bid those homes out. So contractors would be invited to walk the homes. There would be a walkthrough, and they would be invited to come and walk through and then submit a bid on either the rehabilitation or replacement of that home. And one thing I did before that, they're gonna have to go through an income verification. So they're gonna have to provide us documentation, you know, a check stub, different things like that. And then there's gonna be a letter that's sent to that employer, just verifying employment. We wanna make sure that we're addressing homes that are just low to moderate income homes. And then after that, you know, you would do the 9 to 11 homes, get your certificate of occupancy, and close out, and you would be, you know, you would be done.
And so if the homeowner is retired and the only source of income is Social Security or retirement, are they still eligible?
Yes, yes.
Does staff have a recommendation of for what we're, what path that you're wanting to take?
So in an effort to submit a competitive application, staff has recommended the housing rehabilitation program.
And we can only do one, we can't do housing and the economic
I
development?
wish we could do both. I wish we could. And one thing to make note of, when we did apply for the neighborhood revitalization program previously, we had to be shovel-ready. So we spent almost over $100,000 for the engineered plans, if you all remember that. That's something that we don't have at this point. And just based off of the deadline being October 5th, the rehabilitation program is really our best option.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the three, and if you're saying that we'll be kind of behind the curve on the third option, since we already had that from last time, and we got a brand-new community center out of it. You know, number two, you know, obviously coincides with the stuff that's happening. We're on the leading edge of that wave. We're not riding that surfboard yet, in terms of having a kind of a place to sink those dollars into, so I could get behind that one.
Okay. I guess we need to open this up for public comment. Anybody like to, the public like to speak on this? Okay. Edward, you got a?
No, I'm good. I just wanted to make sure that, yeah, there's another portion of this.
Okay. So with that, let's see, what do I need to do here? I need a motion to approve the FY19 Citizens Advisory Task Force recommendation, which is number 3. So need a motion.
Number 3.
Isn't that right? Isn't it 3?
I thought it was number 1.
Number 1.
I mean, number 1, I'm sorry. Yes.
So the housing rehabilitation option.
Right, housing rehabilitation, yes.
So moved.
All right.
Got a motion by Commissioner Becker,
Second.
second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Okay.
And just so you know, we also have to inform you on what the Citizen Task Force did recommend, and they did recommend the housing rehabilitation program.
And, well, and do you already have any homes in view of rehabilitation or no?
No.
So we have
no,
to
can't do
advertise
that.
for that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there was, when we were looking at doing some of those paint jobs,
Yeah.
Commissioner, there's some houses that definitely, problem is we gotta make sure they're homeowners.
Yes.
But yeah, I think we can come up with a list. Okay. Next up, we got ordinance number 2758. Jim, you gonna come up, and then Michael, or how do you wanna handle that? Okay, all right.
Okay. Read the title.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, ordinance 2758, an ordinance of the city of Apopka, Florida, changing the zoning from T Transitional District to MUESGT Mixed Use East Shore Gateway District for certain real property located north of Harmon Road and east of South Binion Road, comprising 19.71 acres more or less, and owned by Binion Road LLC, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
Michael?
Okay. After consultation with staff, as well as staff has communicated with the applicant, the item is to be withdrawn from the agenda. There's currently still flux when it comes to OCPS in dealing with the issue of their capacity enhancement agreements. They have now rendered their position, and this is actually affecting not just this application, but other pending applications. Their position now, as it relates to the city of Apopka, is that the city has a provision in the comprehensive plan in our Education Facilities Policy 3.1, which basically states that the city cannot approve any developments that are going to increase capacity until either A, OCPS makes a determination of capacity, and that's the language, or B, that a capacity enhancement agreement is entered into. Since OCPS is no longer doing capacity enhancement agreements, it leaves us, the city, in a bind because our comp plan will not allow us to go forward. There is a calculated risk in moving forward that potentially OCPS can come back to the city and state, you're inconsistent with your comprehensive plan. And because comprehensive plans are under strict scrutiny under the courts, you deviate, theoretically speaking, you deviate 1 inch from the comprehensive plan, the penalties are pretty severe when it comes to a city. So in those regards, I know staff is currently preparing an amendment to our comprehensive plan, which is really going to mirror what Orange County is currently doing to their comprehensive plan in relation to OCPS and capacity enhancement agreements. So with that in mind, we want to pull this item so we can work with the applicants, work with staff to complete the amendments to the comprehensive plan to then fall in line with what it appears OCPS is wanting the other local governments to do, and we are going to be pretty much mirroring and going concurrently with what Orange County is doing.
Any questions for Michael? Yeah, so anyway, that's kind of where we're at. Is the applicant here, or they've already, I don't know if they, okay, just listen, okay, didn't even come, okay, that's fine, okay, all right. Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter?
The item's been pulled, so it's not subject to public hearing.
It's already,
We've
no,
pulled it-
we're
we've pulled
going
it.
to go ahead and do the public hearing, then we'll postpone it to,
I thought the idea was we were going to actually pull it from the agenda and therefore not have a public hearing on this matter. So
so you want to,
it's pulled from it's pulled from
no, we
consideration.
didn't pull it from the agenda.
Okay, but
So you want to pull it from the
we
agenda?
want to pull it from the agenda and not have a second hearing on this matter.
Okay. Okay. All right, so I guess I'll look for a motion to pull ordinance number 2758.
So moved.
So,
Got a motion
second.
by Commissioner Becker, second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2779.
Ordinance number 2779, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Apopka, Florida, amending Chapter 58, Article 2, Division 2, Section 58-67, fee schedule, residential, amending Chapter 58, Article 2, Division 3, Section 58-103, fee schedule, non-residential, and providing for codification, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and setting an effective date.
Edward?
Mayor, Commissioners, I am filling in for Josh Robinson. He had scheduled leave before, ahead of time. So this is the second reading of the sanitation rates, the increase to the sanitation rates. Josh did a PowerPoint last time on his presentation talking, we have not increased rates since 2015. This ordinance will call for a 3% increase to residential rates, which equates to about 51 cents a month more. And then it has a 6% rate to the commercial rates, which again, those are varying rates because of based on the size of the dumpster. This will generate approximately $150,000 more or annual. And based on his presentation, you can see, through the budget, we've been through the budget process, he has a shortage there. So this basically is, if there's any questions, I think it is important to highlight too, and you have it in your packet, or I gave you a handout, that even at $17.51, we're still the lowest rate for garbage in the county and the surrounding area at $17.50 a month, $17.51 a month. So if you have any questions.
Any questions for Edward? Okay.
Well, I guess Josh is not here, but, and I guess my concern is that $17.51, is that going to be enough to cover his budget and do what he needs it to do?
I think it will for this coming year, this coming fiscal year. I think, we'll continue, as you know, this fund we've struggled a little bit with this fund. I think this is a start to get us through this next year, to see where we go into the future years, because he's put plans in place for his vehicles. If you recall, he had a schedule for his vehicles and everything. So I think this gets us on the right track for the next fiscal year. Of course, as you know, every year we look at the budgets and look at the revenues that support those budgets and determine if, we need to have an increase or not. But
Yeah, I just didn't want to have to come back every year and keep increasing. I'd rather just do it one time and be done with it.
Well, and I think, Commissioner, in this case, what you have is, I think we don't have a cost of living adjustment to our sanitation rate like you have in your water and sewer rates. We haven't done that over the years. You had an increase back in 2015. And so this is kind of that type of an adjustment, or gives you that CIP adjustment, a little catch-up adjustment, CIP adjustment. And there probably will be in the future. I'm not going to tell you that this is the only increase you'll ever have to these, because, and one of the things that's important to mention that Josh sent me before actually sent me to me while he was out, that Orange County is looking at increasing our tipping fees. There's a slight increase to the tipping fees. So if that fluctuates, if that changes every year, then of course that has a big impact on our rates as well. So, but I think this is a start. I think this is a place where we need some adjustment. And I think that in these times that we have, I think, that this is also something that is bearable by our citizens too, and not hitting with a big increase or a huge increase. I think it's better to take it as well.
And I'm sure that our citizens will be fine with it. When we talk, or when they talk to other citizens outside of the city, we pick up trash twice a week. Others only pick it up once a week. We pick up yard waste every week, and others they have to call in order to have it picked up, and the same thing with recycling. So they're getting outstanding service for the buck.
I agree. Like along the lines of public safety, we have great public safety, but we also have a great sanitation department as well. And Josh and his team do a really, really good job.
Yeah, and I mean, we should never politicize fees, right? It's a math exercise.
Yeah,
I mean, what's the cost of doing the service?
Cost of doing business.
And if the cost of doing the service requires us to annually tick that up or float with the actual cost that we see, it's a math exercise. So we shouldn't have to defend anything. It's just point to numbers to say, this is what it costs, and this is what we need to pay for it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, totally agree. Yeah. And I'll probably err on the side of Commissioner Smith is, whatever that number is, whatever that math turns out to be, that should be what we're charging for that service.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter?
But I agree. I live in Errol, they can't brag enough about the garbage service. I mean, they are just ecstatic about it. My wife, she loves it. It doesn't matter what you put out there, they'll pick it up. That certainly is a big selling point.
Agreed.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Look for a motion to approve ordinance number 2779.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Smith.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Becker. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, Edward, on just adding a couple of sanitation operators.
All right, so, and the reason this item is where it is this item is dependent upon that revenue increase. As you know, I'm talking about numbers. The numbers are, the revenues are driven by the numbers. So this is sanitation is requesting to add 2 sanitation workers. And so in his presentation, I'll go ahead and go through the whole presentation to kind of show you how his structured. He has 13 drivers. They have 12 routes. They collect a little over 17,000 tons of garbage per year, and they collect about 10,000 tons of yard waste and bulky waste every year. They collect 2.4 tons, or 2,400 tons of recycling. They service approximately 17,000 homes twice weekly. They have 2 drivers for commercial. That was your residential. On the commercial side, they have 2 drivers. They have 2 routes. They collect about a little over 10,000 tons of garbage on the commercial side, and they service about approximately 670 dumpsters 1 to 7 days per week. His personnel request, he's asking for, currently he's got, his current routes demand that he has 14 drivers daily. He has a total of 15 currently. They've used about 7,800 hours of overtime last year. So those guys are really, really having to put a lot of overtime in based on their schedules. In 2020, there's about 5,200 hours of PTO liability on the books. So, and the average tenure is about 10 years. So the issues we're having is these guys the cycles are longer. We've grown, but we haven't grown the personnel. The personnel has been sitting at this same rate, and I went and I looked back, and at least 8 years. So we have not grown the personnel in this. It has not grown in this fund. So currently they're having a hard time keeping their schedule on time with more than one person off per week. So it makes it tough for the guys to be able to take PTO, vacation, or whatever in that sense. And so with that being said, there's 28 unique routes that he has, and 7 of those require different kinds of types of equipment which require cross-training. Again, Josh is he's struggling. The guys have to do pickup. They don't have time to cross-train. A lot of them don't have time to it's hard for them to take PTO. They're working overtime trying to keep everything up with the current positions that he has. So he's requesting 2 new positions. And I will keep in mind that these positions have been included in will be included in your budget, so your numbers that you have, your revenue, the increase that we had on the prior ordinance, and these positions will be included in your budget. The first position will help alleviate PTO backlog and help facilitate the cross-training. So this position, will help him to be able to allow more of those guys to take guys and girls to take PTO. The second position will help reduce overtime. So he's wanting to add this position in order to reduce that overtime number. So at the end of the day, the big majority of this second position is being offset with the overtime number. So that number is not quite a wash, but it's pretty close, hiring that second one. So the overtime number will go down, but we'll have another full-time employee that he'll be able to use in that department. So that's his presentation. He is asking to bring them on now rather than on October 1, so that he can get things going, get things ready so that when the new fiscal year comes that they've got the staff. So I think the biggest issue here is we haven't added any personnel in this department. He's done a really good job. Those guys have worked really, really hard. They're having a little bit of tough time with overtime for them trying to keep up in overtime as we've grown through the city. And then the other portion is being able to take PTO. Some of those guys, it's just kind of tough when you got 14, you got to have all those routes. It's hard for anybody to be off, so this will allow those guys to also use their PTO time.
Any questions for Edward?
So the max base pay hit, because they're not on yet, so ramp up time, they'll probably come on board this month?
Yeah, they'll probably come on this month.
So it's about a $12,000 base salary hit?
In this current fiscal year, yes. In the current fiscal year, and then, of course, it'll be included in your next year for the full year.
And is that going to require a budget amendment if they come on now?
We will have to look, Commissioner. We will look closely at all the lines to make sure we're so close to the end of the fiscal year. Depending on where we are salary-wise, we'll have to look at that. Because if his overtime, if he brings this person on and some of that overtime is reduced, it may be enough to offset that.
Could be a wash. Yeah,
Could be a wash, but we'll look at it and make sure. Believe me, Jamie will make sure if we need a budget amendment, we'll bring it to you.
All right.
Thank you. Anybody from the public wish to speak on this one? Okay, well, if not, we'll close the public hearing. Look for motion to approve the addition of 2 sanitation equipment operators for the sanitation department.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Smith.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Becker. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2776. Susan?
Ordinance number 2776, an ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, amending the future land use element of the Apopka Comprehensive Plan of the City of Apopka, changing the future land use designation from agriculture to industrial for certain real property located east of Clarcona Road and north of Stone Road, comprising 5.85 acres more or less and owned by 3307 South Clarcona LLC, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
Phil?
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Commissioners. Phil Martinez, Planner 2 with the City's Planning Division. The applicant is proposing a small-scale future land use amendment from agriculture to industrial for approximately 5.85 acres. The The subject property is highlighted in yellow and located north of Stone Road and east of Clarkona Road. To the north are the Nelsons and Sons Nursery. To the east is Lake Charlotte on a property that's owned by the Apopka Nursery Property Owners Association. To the south are the Randall Mechanical Buildings. And to the west is Orange County Fire Station number 28. The property is zoned agriculture districts, and an application for light industrial zoning has been submitted and will be presented at the next agenda item. The subject area is approximately 5.85 acres, with industrially zoned or industrially oriented properties being in the vicinity. The Development Review Committee recommends approval of the small-scale future land use amendment from agriculture to industrial. And on July 21st, 2020, the Planning Commission found the proposed future land use amendment consistent with a comprehensive plan and compatible with the character of the surrounding area, and recommended approval of the change of future land use designation from agriculture to industrial, subject to the findings of the staff report. And the recommended motion for this afternoon is to accept the first reading of ordinance number 2776 and hold it over for second reading and adoption on August 19th, 2020. This concludes my presentation, and the applicant and I are available for questions.
Any questions for Phil?
Is Randall just expanding, or is this a different applicant?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Sid Voline, 1540 International Parkway, Lake Mary. Yes, that's exactly, what is happening over time. The company and really the Randall family of companies, the original was Randall Mechanical, and, since then they branched out into other areas of the construction industry. And they have slowly, and I've been here before, have moved north and have continued to expand their facility to increase the employment here in the city and to continue to grow in their business. So, yes, sir, that is what has happened with this piece. And we actually do anticipate being back to move even further north very shortly. So.
Good to hear.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Anybody else from the public wish to speak on this matter? All right, if not, we'll close the public hearing. Look for a motion to approve ordinance number 2776 at first reading and hold over for second reading.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Becker,
Second.
second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2777.
Okay. Ordinance number 2777, an ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, changing the zoning from agricultural district to IL, light industrial district, for certain real property located east of Clarkona Road and north of Stone Road, comprising 5.85 acres more or less, and owned by 3307 South Clarkona LLC, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
Okay, Phil?
The applicant is proposing a rezoning from agriculture district to IL, light industrial district, for the same subject property as the previous agenda item. The proposed light industrial zoning is compatible with the proposed industrial future land use, and the Development Review Committee recommends approval of rezoning from agriculture district to light industrial district. And on July 21st, 2020, the Planning Commission found the proposed change of zoning consistent with the comprehensive plan and compatible with the character of the surrounding areas, recommending approval of the proposed change of zoning from agriculture district to IL, light industrial district, for the property owned by 3307 South Clarkona LLC and located east of Clarkona Road and north of Stone Road. And the recommended motion for this afternoon is to accept the first reading of ordinance number 2777 and hold it over for second reading and adoption on August 19th, 2020. This concludes my presentation, and the
Applicant's
and
left.
Yeah.
He's counting on you, Phil. Any questions for Phil? Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? If not, we'll close the public hearing. Look for a motion to approve ordinance number 2777, first reading, and hold over for a second reading.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Smith.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Becker. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Yeah, I just want to let you know, we had a discussion with the Randall team and yesterday or day before, and they're looking to try to partner with us on maybe some kind of a technical training school. They've got so many opportunities and can't get qualified workers, and so I'm like, hey, that might work out. So we're going to have some ongoing discussions with Randall to see if we can come up with something that works for everybody. Yeah, okay. Next up, ordinance number 2780.
Okay. 2780, an ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, changing the zoning from transitional T to planned development PD for certain real property generally located west of North Orange Blossom Trail and north of Hogshead Road, comprising of 349.37 acres more or less, owned by American Sanford 4 LLC, Stephen R. Rubright, JP Holdings, Inc., Rubright Properties LLC, Rubright Family LP, James Scott Pridgeon, Douglas and Lisa Surratt, and James P. Purdy, providing for directions to the Community Development Director, severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
All right, Bobby?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bobby Hell, Senior Planner, Community Development. The property is located west of North Orange Blossom Trail, north of Hogshead Road, and west of the Orlando Apopka Airport. The vicinity map shows the location of the property. The airport is right about in this area, and everything that you see outlined in yellow is the subject property. It's 349.37 acres, and it's currently zoned transitional, has a future land use designation of Orange County Rural and Industrial. The future land use designation will have the adoption hearing at the August 19th City Council hearing, or City Council meeting, to change that designation from Orange County Rural and Industrial to City of Apopka Industrial. The applicant is requesting a rezoning to PD to allow flexibility in the development of an industrial park with light and heavy industrial uses to allow for more concentrated development and reduced infrastructure. The PD master plan allows up to 4,500,000 square feet of industrial uses with the prohibition of specific uses that are deemed to be incompatible with this adjacent airport use. The PD master plan proposes a subdivision consisting of 6 industrial lots on 349.37 acres, with lots ranging in size from 4.53 acres to 202.21 acres in size. The largest lot, as you can see, this right here in the middle, is the 202-acre lot. Access to the site is proposed via Wesley Road, Orange Blossom Trail, and via an access easement that is proposed to be established to the west of the Orlando Apopka Airport Road, which the road is right here, which is the main access road going into the airport from 441. The applicant will work to extend access easements down through these adjacent properties and ultimately connect into the industrial parcel. A 20-foot wide buffer tract will be provided around the perimeter of the PD. Internal roadways and utilities will be dedicated to the public. Infrastructure, including roads and stormwater facilities, will be constructed in one phase. The PD master plan contains an airport zone plan, which applies only within the PD boundaries and requires all vertical construction within the zone to be approved by the Florida Department of Transportation and the city. There are master plan provisions from the Land Development Code which will be required to adhere to at the time of a development plan submittal, and those are outlined within the staff report as well as in the ordinance. Those are conditions in the ordinance that the applicant will be required to adhere to upon the submittal of either a minor or a major development plan. The Development Review Committee recommends approval of the proposed rezoning to PD. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the proposed rezoning to PD, and staff recommends approval. We'd be happy to answer questions that you may have, and the applicant is here as well to answer questions.
Okay, any questions for Bobby?
No, just reconfirmation of the fact that the master plan does talk about just light and heavy industrial use only, no residential.
No residential, sorry.
Okay.
Hi, Heather Isaacs. I'm representing Poulos and Bennett, located at 2602 East Livingston Street in Orlando, Florida, 32803. We appreciate all the staff's assistance working with us through this project. It's been an ongoing several-year process, and we're happy to be here today. We did receive unanimous support from the Planning Commission, and we look forward to answering any questions and hope to have the full support of the Commission.
Good. Any questions for? Okay. Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and look for a motion to approve ordinance number 2780 at first reading and hold over for a second reading and adoption.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Becker.
Second.
By Commissioner Smith. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2787.
Ordinance number 2787, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Apopka, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Apopka by amending Chapter 26, Cemeteries, Section 26.4, Fees, by creating Chapter 26, Section 26-13, Cemetery Perpetual Care Fund, providing for codification, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and setting an effective date.
Okay.
And I'm going to go there.
Now, who's going to take notes while you're giving your presentation, Susan?
Okay, we're waiting for the... Okay, we're waiting for the presentation, but it's just really, I'm going to go over the first page. And basically, this is for our cemetery fee update. Essentially, there's two parts. The fees have not been raised in our cemetery since 2011. So our office performed a review of all the costs associated with the maintenance and the support staff, and did a comparison of other municipalities local to our area, and we found that we were one of the lowest, cemetery costs. We were one of the lowest in our costs. So basically, we are only down to 297 existing lots to sell. So we have coordinated with, we're working with Southeastern to get a new area platted. So with that, we have, okay. Oh, sorry. Yep, okay. All right, so essentially, we only have a limited amount of cemetery spaces. And we hadn't raised, just like what we were already going over, that we haven't raised since 2011. So the cost of maintenance and everything that goes along with all of the support and everything of maintaining the cemetery just continues to go up. So we have, the mayor came and we were talking about how to pay for this in perpetuity for all the maintenance and everything, because right now it's just continuing to go up. So we are proposing to establish a perpetual fund for the cemetery for the maintenance of those spaces. Now, going back to what I was saying about the Southeastern surveying company, we're working with Ryan Johnson. He is going to do the platting, and first we have to get like a survey, and then we're going to do the platting on that. So the first thing is that, and he's going to propose, if we can get it right, it's 2,500 extra lots. So the new platting will consist of 2,500 new lots, and these are the areas. So we've got 3 areas. We've got 800 in one area. We've got 200 in another, and the area to the right as you go in the main gate is going to be 15. So basically, these are the costs associated with with the, with the proposed plating and the surveying. So we have 9755 for the survey, and we have 9,669 with the plating. So that comes to, with that, the fees don't include the title search or anything of that nature or the recording. But when I talked to him last, the title search would come to about $350. So we'll add that into the cost on that. But right now, we only have 295 lots available to sell. So, you know, and they seem, we're going at about, you know, we have 4 for this weekend. We have some already scheduled for next weekend. So we're going at about 4 to 5, maybe a week right now. So, and a lot of them are new sales because, you know, some of the, you know, cases are just immediate need. So, and they don't already have spaces. So then, so this would be their scheduled hourly rates. They have, you know, they have different rates for a 2-man crew if they have a 3-man crew, depending on how quickly we need the job done. But, you know, based on how many lots we have left, we need to do something in the near future. So we also are we're working with a couple of different companies to get quotes, and the best quote I found was for the columbarium addition to our cemetery would be a 48 niche, and it would be $13,960. We are proposing to, well, I'll go back over the rates first. So we're going to, our current rate right now is $800 for a resident and $1,200 for a non-resident. And we're proposing to raise that $200 on each of the standard spaces. That would be $200, that would be $1,000 for resident and $1,400 for a non-resident. Cremains are a little bit different because they're, you know, we have, our current resident rate is $450, our non-resident is $600, so we're raising that $100. Our double interment is gonna, the resident rate is gonna go to $1,400, and the non-resident rate's gonna remain where it was. And the columbarium rates, based upon what we had, we're going to go with the non-resident new rate, which is $1,000, or the resident new rate would be $1,000, and the non-resident would be $1,400. So, and also with our fees, we're also going to raise our burial permit fee. Our burial permits currently are going at $50 for a resident and $75 for a non-resident. So we're proposing to raise that to $75 for a resident and $100 for a non-resident. The other two transfer permit fees are staying the same. Really, it's just the relocation permit, which would be, you know, just in case anybody, we don't get very many calls for that. And then transfer of cemetery deeds, we do get calls for that, but we require that they pay $30 because we've got to do all the paperwork added to that. So then in going through this, we have, these are our existing sales that we have had over the last 4 years. So we have, well, we have for, we had in fiscal year 2017, we had 117,900. But then, so this year so far, the proposed sales will be 91,950. A lot of that is because some people do already have graves, and you know, we're selling a lot more cremain spaces now. It seems because we have, you know, we have those rates are cheap. You know, those rates haven't really changed that much. So we are selling a lot more of those, but, you know, and then sometimes we also allow a cremains to go in with a standard. So if we have a person that owns a spot and they, you know, for one reason or another, they, you know, that either the spouse wants to be cremated or it's a family member, they can also go in at no additional cost of additional interment, but they have to pay the burial permit fee, and they can go in as a cremains in that space. So a lot of people, we've had a lot of that too in the recent years. So the cemetery expenditures is kind of small.
That's
I don't know if
fine.
I can make it any
We've
bigger.
already gone over that.
But I think
That's
you guys
fine.
have already gone over
Yeah,
that.
we've seen this, yeah.
Yeah.
So-
And then the fee survey, that's just based upon the other municipalities that we've identified. So to that end, if
So
anybody has
any
any
questions on? just
questions on
kinda-
that?
Yeah. Any questions on that? Okay. All
Okay.
right, go to the ordinance then.
All right, and so the ordinance is the ordinance number 2787. And what we're proposing to do is to raise the rates and put that money in a perpetual fund for future maintenance of the cemetery. And so,
Any questions about that? Because just the highlights on the ordinance is we're going to, obviously, we're going to take 20%, which is 20% of the new rate. That will go into a perpetual fund, and then in 20 years, you'll be able to draw down on that perpetual fund to pay for the maintenance. Because right now, when we talk about, the budgets, as Todd brought up, when we talk about budgets, some of these legacy costs, when the cemetery costs us $50,000 a year to run every year, we talk about streetlights that we're having, those legacy costs, the health benefit, the legacy costs that we've got, the city, they keep adding up and they keep getting bigger and bigger. And so, you want to try to get it to a point where it's self-sustaining. So with the cemetery fees and putting into that legacy, the money into the perpetual fund, we'll be able to, in 20 years, basically pay for the maintenance with the dollars, the revenue coming off that $200. So the whole goal here is some point down the road when we run out of lots, and we've got no income coming in, that we've got enough money to pay, to mow them, to dig the grave sites and all that. So that's kind of the reason we're looking at this ordinance.
and if we took what we still have available, the 297, and we do the platting of the 2,500, just at the resident rate, that gives us, once we sell those lots, it's $559,000. So that's the proposed, if we sold them all at the resident rate. So, any questions?
So only 20% of the new rate will go into the perpetual fund?
Correct.
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right. Because at first, it didn't say that, so I was wondering how you're going to operate, if you're going to put it all in the perpetual fund.
No.
Okay, 20%, okay.
Right, and then in 20 years, we'll be able to take the interest off of that money to help pay for the,
Right.
and so that'll be a perpetual fund, so that's
Right.
yep, okay. Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? If not, we'll close the public hearing, look for a motion to approve ordinance number 2787.
So moved.
Got a
Second.
motion by Commissioner Becker, second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, Jamie, budget amendment.
All right, so Resolution 2020-21, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Apopka, Florida, amending the budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2019, and ending September 30th, 2020, providing for a budget amendment.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Jamie Roberson, Finance Director. The budget amendment before you includes changes in funding and appropriations related to a special disbursement by the Florida E-911 Board of earned interest for each Orange County Public Safety answer point. This $12,000 disbursement is intended to help the PSAP with expenses necessary to protect 911 personnel from COVID-19, which include cleaning and disinfecting, installation of protective barriers between positions, masks, gloves, and any other pertinent supply that is needed for our dispatch department.
Any questions for Jamie? Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? If not, we'll close the public hearing, look for a motion to approve
So
ordinance,
moved.
resolution number 2020-21. Got a motion by Commissioner Smith,
Second.
second by Commissioner Becker. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, city council reports. Commissioner Smith, what you got for us?
Well, I really don't have anything. I just would like to say that on behalf of Commissioner Alice Nolan that we appreciate the services she rendered here as the city commissioner, and that we pray Godspeed for her protection and her family as she transitioned to do the next step in her life.
Awesome, thank you, Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, echo Commissioner Smith's point. Reached out to Commissioner Nolan this morning just to kind of relay our good thoughts and healing prayers for her and her family as they deal with what they're dealing with. So our thoughts are with her.
Thank you. Okay. Next up, Edward.
All right, so I have some new numbers, as I've had the last 2 months. This is the third month. I don't know, it's kind of tough to see on here. Rob, can I get larger? I can't get larger than this, can I? I don't think I can. I know, right? If I can just get this section right here, can I just get large right here? That's all I need. Okay, you go through that one. Just a little bit more, please. That's good. Perfect. So sales tax, we have another month. So we have May's activity that we've collected that for June. I'm sorry, for July. So as you can see, we projected, if you recall, last month we thought that we'd be about a 65% projected reduction. We came in about 63. We thought we would be 50% for the month of May. We had talked about an uptick because of some things that we had seen in the area and the economy. We came in at 45%. So as you can see, last year we had about $928,000 was our sales tax number. This year for that same month is $454,000. So big reduction again. I guess if there's some positive, if you will, we thought would be 50 and it was 45. There's a little bit of positive there. So, and as you can see, we projected out, we think the next month will be about 50, that same trend, and then maybe 25. Again, it'll all depend on, we've seen the numbers go up in some cases with COVID, so it'll be interesting to see where we come in on those numbers. But we continue to watch them. Again, overall, we're down about $1.6 million currently to date. If you average it out, annualize it, it's about 1.7. So as we get the next 2 months, that'll complete our fiscal year. We'll continue to monitor each month. We'll know exactly how far we are from our actual budget estimates. So wanted to give you that update to kind of let you know where we are on that. So now I have some budget information that I want to give you. Like I said last at the budget workshops, we continue to monitor everything every day. The state's recently given us some numbers, so I want to give you those. And let me start with the communication services tax. This is the tax that comes on your phone bills and a lot of electronic media, mainly phone bills though, internet service, things of that nature. If you recall in the budget, we kind of kept that flat. The state's given us a new number for that, and it has, we will see a $102,000 reduction in that number from the prior year. So that's a new number that we've got. The big numbers that we talked about that are the biggest significance in this year in our general fund is sales tax. You can see the state revenue sharing. We projected 25%. They're telling us today about 24. So we were pretty close on that number. Actually, it's a little bit of it's a little more to the positive. It results in only about $24,000 increase, but it is a little more of an increase. The big one is the local government half-cent sales tax. It came in at over 27%. So the 25 number was a little bit low. So they're telling us right now it's about 27.3, 27.4, and that's an additional $214,000 reduction over what we had in our proposed budget hearing. Again, we will keep monitoring these. The state meets. There haven't been any changes in the other numbers. Jamie and I are working really closely. We're going to continue to work each day as she closes the month of July. We'll be able to look and see if any of these other revenues have will they increase, and what their change will be, so that we give you real data each month as we close the books. So as you can see, we're up. We have a shortfall revenue of about $1.2 million from what we had before. That's about $300,000 more than what we were. And that, again, it's due to those three revenues at the state, when we got the state numbers where they actually landed. On the expenditure side, nothing has changed. We have not changed anything on the expenditure side. We are continuing to look at those. I did tell you last time that we talked about our insurance, our health insurance. We went out to the other pool for our health insurance, and they would not offer a quote. Based on the claims on our account, we have some big claims on our account, and so they could not offer us any better deal. They said that what we had was a good deal for what we had in claims in our insurance. So there's no savings there, unfortunately. I will say, though, that we have our liability and casualty insurance out to bid. We should be getting that soon. Maybe we'll see some savings there that can help. So, but that's out there, and we're still looking at that, still watching that. I do want to draw your attention. I want you to focus on the STIF payment. And the STIF payment, as you know, that's the payment for the Martin Road improvements that we had. That number was low. Jamie, we worked with the property appraiser, and I worked with Jamie, and our number was a little bit low. That STIF payment calculation is about $325,000. If you recall, the last meeting we had it projected at I think it was 266 on the last one. So you can see there's a significant increase there in an expenditure for the STIF payment. But there's some good news, I think, here, and keep this in mind. It looks like we may not have to have this STIF payment. It looks like that we may have enough impact fees in that area to pay that loan off before we get to April, because this STIF payment would be due in April of '21. So it looks like that we may not have this little over $300,000 payment. We will continue to monitor that over the next month before we get to our workshops in September, and that may be some positive news there. So I want to make sure that you're aware of that and keep that in mind. I do want to say that, and we continue to watch expenditures. We're looking at everything. We've asked the departments to look back and see if they can reach back and find out if there's anywhere that, is there something we can, if we can squeeze out something here that we can maybe push to the next budget year? Is there some efficiencies in some areas that they may have? We've received a few things back from the departments. Those will be reflected. As we move through these numbers, we'll put those numbers together as well. I think a critical date we need to be all watching is August the 14th. August the 14th, the Revenue Estimating Council is going to meet one more time. So, and we'll know at that point, they will give out another set of numbers, of these numbers, based on the data that they have between the last time they gave the numbers out and August the 14th. Maybe we'll see some positive there. So, with that being said, I can answer any questions you have related to this, if you have any on these items, because there's some other items in your packet too that I wanted to talk about. There's the millage rates have all been set now, so there's some information in there so you can see what our neighbors are doing. As you know, we went up a quarter of a mil, and then you've got Winter Parks going up 0.47. They're telling us though that they probably will not land there. Maitland is up 0.1660, and Ocoee is up 0.25. All of the other jurisdictions have...
Ocoee down.
I'm sorry, Ocoee's down 0.25. All of the other jurisdictions have adopted the same millage rate. So I just wanted you to have that for your information,
What's interesting is that they've gone down on their millage, and they've awarded 0%
so far.
COLA and merit.
Right.
Well, and some of them haven't even had their first workshops like we had. Some of them are just getting to that now. So I struggle with how do you set the proposed rate if you just get into those workshops. But again, that's how they do their stuff. But we wanted to have all of our picture out front so that you had all the information out front when you set that proposed rate.
It's helpful.
But it is interesting to know that. There's also now this survey, keep in mind, we did not do this. This was given to us by another jurisdiction, And they told us that a lot of these were guesses and estimates or proposals at what people were doing early on. But there's a list of what they're looking at from Merit.
Yeah, like I talked to Winter Park, I think, and they're gonna do a 1% below 75,000, or 2% below 75,000 and 1% above 75. So kind of a twist on just a COLA.
Yeah, and the point being is that, what are we at right now, August 5th?
Yeah.
So we've got another month to get this right,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
right?
And I think the other number, there was two or three numbers you need to think about. One, well, millage is done, so whatever that's done. But when you look at a pay raise, a 1% pay raise across the board, every employee is $300,000. So any way you take that. So it doesn't matter if it's merit, doesn't matter if it's, COLA, but that's the number. If you want to get to another number, you want to get to 2 or 3, just know that we've got to do something else with, with expenses or revenue. And I don't, we'll know something on the 14th would help us with that. So, if we're looking at raises, that's where it's a $300,000 hit for a 1% pay raise. And so if you look at the other cities, I mean, I think there's some 2s, there's some 3s, there's quite a few 0s, but we're not, I don't think everybody's landed, just like, Winter Park's already changed, but I don't know if that's even firm yet. But anyway, so I thought that was some interesting data for everybody.
And I will tell you to share with you that I've talked to a lot of the other jurisdictions, and they're all kind of up in the air. They're not set, nothing's set yet. They're doing the same thing. They're waiting to see what are the numbers going to look like, what's going to happen from the state. Is the state going to make another, if the state comes back and makes another adjustment, goes the other direction, that's going to affect a lot of things. If it goes up, that could be some great news for us when we come back in 2 or 3 weeks, especially, we have a month before we come back in September, a lot can happen. There's talk in DC about some money out for local governments. That could have a big impact depending on what they decide to give out. But again, that all determines how it will be distributed, who will get it, how we'll get it, where we have to use it for, and so that's still unknown. But we're watching that too, so there could be something from there as well. So with that, I can answer any questions. I do want to say that, Commissioner Smith, I need to work your magic and get my 27 to 15, and I'll take 20. I would be good with 20, but if you could get my 27 to 15, you're the man.
Still working on it.
There you go.
Work in progress.
A lot of praying going on there. Any questions for Edward? Okay. All right, next up, Michael, have you got anything? No. Okay, other than you've got a baseball game.
I know.
Your son's going to be pitching. They're 12 and they've won 12 out of 13?
They've won 13 of their last 14 games through spread over 3 tournaments. So
and a 1.0 ERA?
He's actually 3-0 with a 1.2 ERA over his 3 starts this summer.
That's awesome. Okay. All right, last
Mayor,
up.
Mayor, one more thing I want to announce, and Jim was reminding me. Don't forget, you have your CRA budget workshop on the 18th of August at 6 o'clock. I mean, the 19th, I'm sorry, the 19th of August at 6 o'clock, which will be before the regular council meeting.
All right. Okay, and that's last but not least, yes, as we talk about, our hearts and prayers go out to Alice Nolan. And, with that resignation, we've had to scramble to put together a special election. We've talked to Bill Cowles from Supervisor of Elections, Orange County, and the date he gave us to have everything in place was August 25th. So we're trying to make that date 28th. Okay, so anyway, we're working hard. I know Susan and Michael, and just so you know, I know Susan been under a lot of pressure with only one part-timer working with her. So we're going to bring back Linda Goff just for the elections piece, that little piece there, so that Susan can focus on the things that, the day-to-day activities needs to go on. And so Linda can spend a little time making sure we get this done right. But so anyway, there's the timeline in the packet there. Qualifying is on 8/26 noon to noon 8/28. Book closings 10/5. Public test supervisor elections 10/9. Early voting will be 10/19 to 11/1 at the VFW. special election will be on 11/3, so it will be the same date as the regular general election. So everybody will go to their state and federal precincts. So it won't be the two precincts, it won't be VFW and the Northwest. It will be the normal precincts. So that's the timeline you've got there. We'll get a post, we'll get Rob and his team to put something together on their qualifying paperwork, all the dates, and any of those kind of things. Interesting enough, Michael did it in Spanish. I don't think you got that even in your packet. He translated for us to it in Spanish as well, so thank you, Michael. Thanks for your help on that one. And then in there also is the mayor's proclamation. I guess I need to read that.
Probably best.
Huh?
Probably best to read it.
Yeah, so, and then we'll have a resolution will be the next commission meeting.
Correct.
So let me read the proclamation. November 3rd, 2020, city special election, City of Apopka, Florida. Whereas in accordance with the provisions of the Charter and Code of Ordinances of the City of Apopka, Florida, a special election shall be held on November 3rd, 2020, to elect a commissioner for Seat 2 to fulfill an unexpired term. And whereas the term of office, Commissioner Seat 2, will expire at 12:00 p.m. on April 26, 2022, it is therefore necessary that a commissioner for Seat 2 be elected at a special election of the City of Apopka, Florida. Now therefore, I, Brian Nelson, Mayor of the City of Apopka, Florida, as required by law, do hereby proclaim and pronounce that a special election will be held in the City of Apopka, Florida on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020, from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. for the purpose of electing a commissioner for Seat 2. Voting precincts will be determined by the Orange County Supervisor of Elections. Early voting will be available through the Orange County Supervisor of Elections office and coincide with their designated sites 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. from Monday, October 19th, 2020 until Sunday, November 1st, 2020. Only the voters of the city residing within the city limits who are properly registered with the Orange County Supervisor of Elections or who will be properly registered by October 5th, 2020 may vote in this election. Candidates for said office must qualify with the city's clerk office beginning at 12 p.m. on Wednesday, August 26th, and ending at 12 p.m. on Friday, August 28, 2020, at City Hall, 120 East Main Street, Apopka, Florida. The Orange County Canvassing Board is hereby authorized to canvass the City of Apopka ballots voted in the November 3rd, 2020 special election in compliance with Section 30-26 Apopka Code of Ordinances. In the event it becomes necessary to have a runoff election, this will be held on Tuesday, December 8, 2020, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at Precinct 9104, Apopka Community Center, 519 South Central Avenue, Apopka, Florida, and Precinct 9204, Northwest Recreation, 3710 Jason Dwelly, Apopka, Florida, 32712. Early voting will be available through the Orange County Supervisor of Elections Office, 119 West Cayley Street, Orlando, Florida, Monday, November 30th, 2020, through Friday, December 4th, 2020, from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. I, Brian Nelson, hereby appoint the Canvassing Board for said runoff election as follows. Canvassing Board, City Commissioner Alexander Smith, City Commissioner Kyle Becker, and Elections Clerk Linda Goff. In witness herefore, I have set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Apopka, Florida, to be affixed and attested by the Deputy City Clerk of Apopka the 5th day of August, 2020. That's the proclamation. And with that, also a couple other quick things. Got the statistics on COVID. Starting to trend down. Good news, really good news. Feel like we're finally cutting the corner here. Some good news. I know that Commissioner Becker was at the Hilton Garden Inn grand opening, and just talked to some of the guys over there at Taurus. They had a 60% occupancy rate on Sunday night.
Oh, wow.
Which is
pretty amazing considering the, where we are today.
That's a beautiful hotel.
Yeah, it is. So if you get a chance, go out and check out the new hotel we've got. Next up, we've got.
We don't want them to check it out, Commissioner Mayor. We want them to spend the night.
There you go. Next up, voting delegation information for the League of Cities. And so we're looking, we got Commissioner Smith, we've got a list of resolutions that we'd like to take up. If anybody see any problems, if not, need a motion to approve the list of resolutions for the Commissioner Smith to take on behalf of the city of Apopka.
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner Becker.
Second.
By Commissioner Smith. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody.